committee appointed by the city council, coming from the district and the different neighborhoods to give feedback and input on various issues and also vote on zoning to the city council government, and a good chance to have face-to-face with your city council member, as well as the members of the DAB, as well as members of the public. If you are here for a particular zoning case to speak, and if you're here just to speak on any other issue separate from a zoning case, know that there will be an opportunity in the agenda to do that as well. So with that, I'll call the meeting to order and request a motion to approve. Well, if there's without objection, we'll approve the agenda for October 2nd, 2023. Hearing no objection. Are there any corrections, clarifications for the minutes from the September 11th meeting? Hearing none, make a motion to approve those minutes without objection. Seeing none, those minutes are approved. We're now entering the staff reports, and we'll start with the Wichita Fire Department.
How is everyone? Good. All right. Lieutenant Jeremiah Two-Dager, Wichita Fire Department, Firehouse 10, 2050 East 21st on the day shift. Give you guys a little bit of a rundown as to some of the incidents we had in District 1 for the month. Some of these are still kind of an ongoing investigation. I'll just kind of touch base on those. So within District 1, we had a fire 401 South Market, and that one's currently under investigation. 707 South Estelle, that was ruled as an accidental fire. 644 North Grove, that one is still under investigation. 352 North Spruce, that one's under investigation. 1557 Gilrose, that one was ruled accidental, an exterior fire that started on the deck. 300 block of South Lulu, that was an intentionally set dumpster on fire. 2500 block of East Douglas, that one is currently under investigation. The 6400 block of East Central, that one was ruled as a accidental fire, and that was a painting related incident where combustible rags self-ignited, causing some damage there. Last but not least, 1600 block in North Hydraulic, that one is a ongoing investigation as well. So with that, I'll stand for any questions with the report for the incidents.
Can you share the first accident you, 707 something?
Yep, 400 block of South Market.
Or no, can you share, sorry, the reason what the accident was for that first accident you mentioned? I think it was 707 something.
So that one was fire originated in a basement stairwell. Possible electrical malfunction is what they kind of ruled the 700 block of South Estelle is.
Say historically, like I'm curious when you bring the reports, and how do these stack up to like what you see monthly in this time of year or a year ago?
So with the 22 report, I believe fires are still kind of remaining at a plateau. As the winter comes on, that'll adjust, obviously. So I think that tentatively the 23 report will probably show pretty much the same report, just kind of average 500 fires, working fires a year. So we're sure we'll probably be pretty close on track on that. So and obviously there's different COVID kind of changed a lot of stuff. There was fires that went out because everybody was home. So type of thing. But
Any questions or comments? Gavin?
Just a quick one for me. We've heard from all file, and I believe it's been since August, been asking for the 4th of July readout.
Yeah.
Wichita Police Department's been saying y'all have responsibility over that. So if that can be shared via email or something.
yeah, I'll grab your information.
Okay.
So some highlights to what the Wichita Fire Department's been doing within the past month and kind of going into the month of October. Fire Prevention Week starts the week of October 8th. The slogan this year will be cooking safety starts with you. Pay attention to fire prevention. So across the 23 kind of houses in the city, as well as our folks downtown, will be out and about doing a whole host of events. Big one that I'd like to point out will be on Saturday, October 14th. The Wichita Firehouse is to be open to the public to come in, talk with us, hang out, see what your neighborhood fire station looks like, and meet some of the people that work there. So we're looking forward to that.
October 14th.
October 14th. Some recognition for the Wichita Fire Department. We have a trade magazine known as Firehouse. And every year, reports get submitted throughout the United States, and even Canada, with some different rescues or different tasks that have happened throughout the year. I'm proud to say that the Wichita Fire Department was recognized with a Valor Award for a house fire that happened in 2000 block in North Market last year, which resulted in the saving a 1-year-old in the house fire. We had a unit citation, honorable mention for the crews in the city Southwest for a 1200 block south Longwell fire, where several people were saved from the fire. September 9th of this year, 207 firefighters from all of the state of Kansas came to Wichita, completed the 9/11 stair climb. And the significance of that is basically we're climbing the floors for 343 New York City firemen that died on 9/11. So this is the first year that it's happened since COVID. Had a really good turnout. Multiple Wichita firemen participated in the stair climb to remember the 343. Some stuff on the horizon right now. Wichita Fire Department has purchased 2 truck companies, which are our 100-foot aerial ladders, and 1 engine company to replace some of the apparatus that's currently in our fleet, as well as the purchasing of a new urban search and rescue trailer. So we should be getting those rigs tentatively probably by the end of the year, and on track hopefully the first part of the year. So with that, I will also stand for questions.
For the public, any comments, questions for the fire department? Anyone else from Dab?
Do have a question, since it's cooling off now, if I have a fire pit and I light my fire pit, and if I want to, even though this is early before November, I want to deep fry a turkey, should I do that in my garage or in the house?
Good question. So with everything starting to kind of cool down, one of the big things is we're looking at furnaces too with your home. Make sure carbon monoxide, having your furnaces serviced, prevent carbon monoxide. As far as outdoor burning, there are ordinances in place for the city of Wichita. Wind cannot be greater than 15 miles an hour. Within the city to burn, you're not allowed to burn anything other than limbs, stuff like that. So you can't burn lots of leaves and stuff like that. That would cause a lot of smoke in the neighborhood. And so, yeah, I mean, go out and enjoy the weather. It's the best time of the year. So, and then as far as the turkey frying, for that, highly recommend to have that done outside. So unless you want to see us. So. Thank you. Anybody online?
All right, thanks so much.
All right. Get your information.
Yeah, that would actually be beneficial if you shared with the whole Dab, so that could be just passed on to Tasha or.
Okay, yeah, perfect.
And we will follow up. No, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Police department. You don't mind? Mr. Grinley.
Hello, I'm Officer Grinley with Wichita Police Department. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So I pulled the reports for the last month. We're at about a 20% decrease in violent crimes, which is awesome. Over month to month, as well as the last 90 days over the 5-year average, we're also down a little over 20%. So that's good. One of the main things that would help with that is just make sure that people call when they have something going on, that they call 911. Occasionally we're getting some calls where there's only one person calling, and then we get out there and find that 5 or 6 people saw stuff, and we have witnesses of stuff that happened, but they didn't want to call. So that's something that's very important. Please give us a call if you guys see something. Some of the upcoming things that we have, with Halloween coming the end of the month. I know it's a month away, but let's be aware that there are people out there walking around. As well as let's keep the kids safe. And make sure that they're only going up to houses that have their lights on and that are well lit and that they have someone going with them. I apologize, I didn't get a whole lot more added up today because I've spent most of the day at the high schools with all of the disgruntled high school kids that are wanting to fight each other. So I spent most of my day dealing with all of them. So did anyone have any questions for me?
Yeah, I do have a question. When you guys all went out there and you said that there was about 5 witnesses that saw things but didn't call, are they providing feedback when you then find that out of why they didn't call, why they're not reporting? Have they shared that, any information?
I would say most of the time, or a large portion of the time, it is, oh, well, that occurred all the time. That, we hear gunshots every night. We hear gunshots every weekend. I would guess that some of it has to do with they don't want retaliation as well. But in a like a shooting situation or a larger with large police presence, any situation with that, we do what we call a neighborhood, where we will go and contact every single house within a certain area, usually the entire block that it's in. And if it's happening like on the corner of a street, we'll end up hitting in all 4 directions. We'll go to every single neighbor so that nobody's left out. So we try to get all that information as well. I would guess that a lot of it has to do with they believe the shootings are occurring or this crime is occurring over and over. And I believe some of it would be for retaliation purposes.
Officer Brindley, I heard a few days ago, I don't know if you're able to speak to this or have information on it, but I heard about an incident where a student at Robinson Middle School off Oliver was found to have brought a gun to the school, and then it was then seen and reported as the student was leaving the school. Is there any more information on that can be provided, or is that still under investigation?
Well, because it dealt with a juvenile, we don't give out a whole lot of information. And with that being said, I'm not 100% sure on too many of the details myself. So I apologize, I can't give you much more on that one.
I understand, just asking for the neighborhood, it's come up
Yeah.
in some discussions. I was also curious, as we talked over the last few months about the shifts with personnel away from CPO positions, back to patrol and other things, the limiting of CPOs. Are you seeing any anecdotal or statistical impact of that, even just anecdotally with communication? Maybe is that contributing to some of the reporting that's going on or lack of by witnesses? How is that rolling into your role and the roles in the other beats?
Well, I mean, I would say that the lack of calling 911 has been there for years. Even when we were a full community policing team, the number of calls still were limited. As for, have I noticed any difference? I would say I have more follow-up to do. But I understand, I mean, we are very short-staffed. Right now, there's very few people that want to be police because of the way society is as well. And we're working on that. I'm part of the recruiting team as well. And so we're trying to come up with anything we can to, any ways we can help with that. I can't say what some of the stuff that that the police department's looking into, because I don't have the authority to say that, but we're looking at ways to bring people in maybe a little bit younger, and having them do other jobs on the department until they're old enough to become a police officer. And I'm aware that if we could somehow get 300 extra people to join the police department, I know that community policing would be staffed again. So I look forward to that day.
Other questions, comments from DAB members?
A small one, the last few months, we've been hearing a lot about thefts, particularly out of cars. Are those holding steady, have gone down since the last month, along with violent crime, or is that, where is that?
So for the last month to the prior month, we're down about 9%. That 9% actually is it's only 4 calls. So that number, but across the year to date, we would be down. Again, we're down single digits. So we're leaning the right direction, but I also know that this time of year, our numbers tend to fall off when school's back in session. And it should be, unfortunately, statistically, it will be picking up here in the next month or so with Christmas shopping coming around. One of the things that I would definitely make sure is if you have valuables in your car, at very least hide them, put them in the trunk of the car, and just keep your car clean. Because if you remove all the valuables or remove stuff from there that people can look in and see that gym bag and I think, well, there must be gold in there. And you know that it's just your sweaty gym clothes. It'd be better just to take them inside. So.
One question. So you said because society is one of the reasons why people are no longer wanting to be police officers, are there any measures being done in-house to show that it's a great place to work? Is there a PR movement going on or anything to try and get some new recruits in?
Yeah, definitely. I know like with one of the things like the fire department has is they were able to change their schedule with some of the criteria to get into the fire or to join the fire department. And so they've opened that up so they can allow more people in, and then providing them with that training afterwards. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to figure out as well. And then just, I know a lot of it is that the fewer officers we have, the more stressed out those officers are. Because those that are wanting to be here and those are willing to help out as much as they can, I feel like they're starting to get burnt out. And so we're definitely trying everything that we can. I know council is trying to help us out as well. Just to either open up the contract to have a discussion about what we can do as well. And just trying to open up some new spots to alleviate some of those areas. We have we call them the CCC. They are they're officers who are either on light duty, whether it's an injury or whatnot, that are basically manning telephones. And so they're relieving some of those calls by calling the people and discussing things over the phone rather than having officers come out. I know with like our case desk, they weren't able to, there's certain reports that case desk isn't allowed to take because it requires a commissioned officer. And so those are areas to help alleviate. We have those areas to help alleviate some of those calls so that officers are able to go to the more violent crimes or the crimes that need more attention.
Okay, so yeah, I just recently found out about one of your departments that really, I forget the actual name of it, but they have resources like clothing and stuff like that for citizens that are in need. And so to me, that's some of the things I think you could promote to show, some other aspects of being a police officer. And it's the office over there off of by the Ronald Reagan building, kind of tucked off in the back. I forget, but I went over there and they gave me some products to give to some teenagers. And so those are some of the good little things that I think that you could promote and would maybe help with the society part of it.
Okay.
Small one for me, and this is perhaps not something that you can address, officer, or even a council member can, but something that we've heard a few times in y'all's reports about staffing is the discrepancy in pay, and that folks are looking for ways to make more money or the same amount of money in different locales, different nearby communities. And so part of me wonders if there is perhaps some duplicative operations in police, so grants administration, communications, finance, and the like. If some of those resources were rolled into the larger city infrastructure, if that would free up more money to pay police to stay and retain folks. Now, this is not something for you to comment on. I'm just kind of putting it out into the ether because there's money there. I think it's 42% of the budget last I checked, but some of those things might free up some more money to help pay the officers who are out going door to door, and the like.
Well, that is definitely an area that I am not allowed to, I mean, yes, everyone would love more money, but that's across the board. I mean, if someone came to your house and offered you a lot more money, I'm sure you'd be happy with it too. So that I'm gonna deal with all the financial questions. That's gonna have to go to administration or to city council. I'm surviving off the money I make. We'll put it that way.
Follow up to one of the prior questions about recruiting, and talked about the fire department and changing some of their recruiting standards. I'm a little naive here. I know a couple of years ago, there was discussion on beards and tattoos, and I see based on you, the policy has changed there. But I was thinking of things like, has the department, and especially in light of the city, decriminalizing and providing directions on THC and marijuana charges with nothing else going on and an incident. Does the department have they updated, or are they legally allowed to update their policies if someone has a possession charge and that's really it on their record, or things like that, where it's a single charge? Are they still labeled in, especially if it was when they were a juvenile, to then participate later on?
So there are some cases where we are allowing officers to still go through the application process, have them go through the academy. I don't know 100% of, I mean, there's no blanket answer to yes, everyone's allowed, or no, no one's not allowed. We have looked into that. It's going to be definitely a case by case basis. I know that one of my friends, 10 years ago, when he tried to get on the police department, he had one marijuana possession charge when he was very young, and they disqualified him 10 years ago. But I know now that would be, they would look into each individual person and each individual case. I think the way it is now, that if he had that charge from, now 20 years ago, or now it's about 20 years ago, they would say, well, you haven't done it since then, come on over, let's at least send you through and try to get it. So we are definitely opening up some of those areas. I know like tattoos, when I first got on, that was a no. They had to be covered up and everything. The only rules we have now is they can't be on your neck and face and on your hands. So we allow a lot more with tattoos, obviously with facial hair. We are trying to open that up, but yet keep it still as professional as possible.
It's good to hear that y'all are revising it a bit, case by case, but if it is at all possible, as y'all have discussions going forward, I would think for recruiting purposes, having a clear standard would help. And that would help. It'd be easier to get that information out if there was, especially if y'all are reforming, as the city has adjusted their own policies, versus go ahead, you will apply, maybe you'll be good. Individual feedback that could be a part of those discussions as laws change and as the culture changes a bit.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Any other DAB members with questions or comments? Any members of the public with questions or comments for the police department? All right, thank you so much, Officer Grindley.
Thank you for your time, guys.
All right, Parks and Rec, they available? Because we're doing this with.
Please record.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
All right, awesome. It wouldn't unmute for some reason. All right, so my name is Corey. I work at the Carl G. Brewer Community Center. I'm gonna go through the highlights from the three rec centers, Edgemoor, Woodard, and Brewer. I'm gonna start with Edgemoor. So not this Saturday, Saturday, September 9th, we held a city crew event and a back to school bash. So we had about 190 participants and family members in attendance for that. So there was inflatables, carnival games, face painting, a color run. They had a DJ. There was a 1 mile run that they did, and it was all given medals. So it was pretty cool. A lot of the kids really enjoyed it. We also had all the Sergeant Justice, Barry DeVice, and everybody was out there. So it was a good time with that. Also for Edgemoor, they're partnered up with Girls on the Run. The program is for girls in 3rd and 5th grade, which inspire girls to recognize and embrace their inner strengths and connect with other girls while getting physically active. So their goal is to end it and finish a 5K. So that's pretty awesome. The Edgemoor is partnering with them. All right, so on to Woodard. Due to the high demand of participants, Lynette Woodard has added two more Japanese swordsmanship classes for the fall session. There are 2 8-week classes being offered on Wednesday evenings and Saturday morning. They have about 26 participants signed up, and it's going to be over $1,000 in revenue that they will make for that, which is pretty awesome. Lynette Woodard also added a new gym rental to bring in an additional $50 per week after the evening classes. They also have a new instructor teaching cardio mix aerobics class on Wednesday evenings for 6 weeks, which is going to be $25 per participant. The first class was actually on September 27th at 6 o'clock, and it went pretty well. They also, all the soccer classes that they have going, they're all filled up for 4 to 5 weeks, 30-minute sessions to make over $336 in revenue. All right, on to Brewer. Don't have much going on over here. This is the same old, but we have our Halloween event that we usually have in October. We're actually going to partner up with Evergreen this year due to the incoming construction projected to start beginning of next year. So we're going to be over here boxing stuff up here pretty soon. So it's going to be a big event. I usually bring in over 3,000 people. So hopefully they will all make it over to Evergreen this year. And we lost our gym rental. So now we have gym space. If anybody knows anybody that has a basketball, soccer team, volleyball, send them my way so I can get them a location. That's it. Any questions?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. I heard that there's a new hip hop line dancing at Lynette Woodard that's pretty fun.
Well, she didn't put that on there, so
Okay.
usually Angela always has amazing instructors and comes with unique classes, so I bet it's awesome.
Cool.
And members of that, members of the public. All right, thanks so much.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, public library.
My name's Ann Ethan from the Wichita Public Library. I sent out a written report, so I'll just hit a couple of points. All of our locations will be closed next Monday, October 9th, for our annual Staff in Service Day. It always catches people by surprise. We won't be there. At the Angelo Branch in October, we're continuing our once a month family pajama story time. Tuesday evening, October 17th at 6:30 p.m. and a drop-in craft for kids on Saturday, October 21st. And I did want to mention the October Tuesday Topics program down at the main library, sponsored by the League of Women Voters, a forum for the mayoral candidates. And that's 6 p.m. Tuesday, October 24th at the main library. Yes.
Some of us are still really concerned. We'd like to hear a progress report on being able to have longer hours at the Angelou Library.
Sure. The actual announcement on what the hours will be, there has not yet been a public announcement. We have advertised for the new librarian for the Angelo branch and the Walters branch. So we're in the process of the interviewing, hiring, and so on. So
Do we have any ideas when we might be able to look at an improvement in that?
I hope before the end of the year. We're working on our end of things. It does take a little bit of time. Then HR has to do their thing and get people on board and trained. But I'm hoping before the end. I really am, and I would be thrilled to bring our new librarian here to introduce them as soon as they're on board.
Thank you.
Remember pointed to a survey at the last meeting regarding the hours and I think it was pointed to the data that was assessed from the community, kind of pointed to some of the things that needed to be put in place as rationale as to why they were operating when they were. So I read the report, thought it was a great report. PPMC did a phenomenal job. But I'm hoping, like, do you have like aggregated data specific? So it was very broad. It said that PPMC surveyed 460 people. I'm curious how many of the 460 that participated were actually from this district?
Or the community.
That I don't know, but I'll see what I can find out.
Okay, and then it was done in 2017. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
And so I'm curious because I know that there have been improvements to the Maya Angelou Library since that time. It seems that when the survey was done, the utilization rate surrounded most around computers in that branch. Since 2017, have more computers been added?
No, we still have the same number of computers. We have 8 public computers there.
Okay, and then it also, I just want to share this because the data was heavily emphasized by the last person who came here as rationale. And it is bothersome to me specifically that the data continue to be pointed to as to why there are limited hours. But I just want to note that in 2017, when that report was done, over a quarter of the respondents specifically for the Maya Angelou branch said that they were concerned about the hours of operation. And that was a huge barrier for them. And here we are 6 years later, having the same problem. And then just a small correlation that the utilization primarily for that branch was computers, not books. And we still haven't added more computers. So I just share that to say, like, if we are going to use data as a rationale as to why something is the way it is, like, can we like just do a better job, or how can we be helpful advocating on your behalf to the city? Because I know it's often not your decision, but how can we be more helpful in being collaborative partners with you all to advocate for what the data says? Because they've been complaining about the hours, and they also have been utilizing computers, I imagine, for workforce needs or just research needs. And so I want to be a champion for you all because I do believe that it is important for this community.
Yeah. And folks on the city council and on the library board know it always comes down to how much money can we get in the budget this year. I mean, the hours of operation have not changed in the 9.5 years I've been here. So yeah, it's the same problem, and we're slowly working on it. And I hope this isn't the only increase in hours. I hope more come later, but we're starting with this and want to be able to offer more services like one-on-one help with resumes and job searching, which would be something that the new librarian would be able to do.
I have one more question, if that's okay. So when I'm looking through the report, there's a robust list of recommendations for each branch. And when I look through the recommendations for the Evergreen branch, it looks like majority of those recommendations have been met. And again, applaud you all for that. I'm curious, where does the funding come from to make those changes to the respective branches and who decides the priority for those dollars.
If you're talking about changes to the physical structure, that's the capital improvement budget.
So CIP.
Yeah. So I know we've got in the near future, plans coming up for remodels at Maya Angelou, at Rockwell, and at Alford. I just don't know exactly when things are gonna start. And do you know anything?
That's okay. That's okay. I don't expect you to have.
But yeah, it's a different pot of money than the annual appropriation that pays our wages and buys the books and subscribes to the databases.
And that's another little concern is, last meeting, they mentioned that when this librarian is brought on board, that person's job will be community outreach
Part of it.
and that sort of thing. I'm wondering if there's any way that you could utilize volunteers to help with making the library open for parents with young children to take them to the library after supper.
I do not know at this moment what sort of volunteer opportunities we might have, but I never want to say no. If we've got people who want to volunteer.
You know, like he said, we all want to help any way we can. So if you come up with some ideas, you might let any of us know.
One of the things we've always wanted volunteers for and have never had much luck with is people to help customers who need help writing their resume, doing job searches. Because with only 2 part-time paraprofessionals operating that branch on a day-to-day basis, they can't give them that kind of dedicated one-on-one support. And we've advertised for volunteers in the past and not gotten anybody. I know that program, they have volunteers doing that at the Rockwell branch and it's working really well. So I'm hoping that maybe we can get some volunteers at Angelo.
You know, again, we've got some people who are working, but they would volunteer to do exactly that. And they would be the very best people to help with building resumes. So again, we're looking at the hours from 6 to 8:30 or something, you know, would be
Yeah, right
would
now.
be really helpful.
Right now, we're just open Tuesdays from 6 to 8, but we'll, I can't say what the new hours are gonna be, but it'll be announced just as soon as we can.
Comment to that, being where Maya Angelou Library is located with the university WSU right, you know, around the corner. That could perhaps be a great resource for volunteer or students, you know, that would be a very mutually beneficial endeavor perhaps. So I'd be happy to help make connections in that way.
Sure.
And then I think you kind of just answered the other question I had was, once this librarian is hired, it will extend to just regular business hours, or not sure on that either.
I can't say
Gotcha.
what the new hours are gonna be.
But there will be more.
There will be more.
So
One day.
I had recently got a library card.
Congratulations.
I didn't think I needed one, but I need to research grants and need a library card to use your computer system downtown. So
Right.
that's something we can maybe start thinking about, because I never thought I'd need one.
Right, and that's kind of the goal of some of the outreach is, you know, there's things that we have, databases that we have, test prep resources that we have online that people don't know about, that you can access with the library card. The grant writing stuff is, might only be available at the main library downtown. But you do have to have the library card in order to get to it. So, yeah, we, at Evergreen, we've been issuing more cards lately because our community partners are bringing in ESL classes and GED classes. So we're seeing more people who discover that a library card is useful and perhaps necessary, I would say. And to give them other resources for their studying. So
So I'm looking forward to your community person. My day job, I'm in the community. I have so many ideas. I just.
I'm glad, I welcome any and all ideas.
Especially with nonprofits popping up in 67214, having access to that grant portal that would be amazing.
And I.
Um,
My name is.
Nicola.
I know you. I know your name.
Please sit back up there. Something along these said, I lost it. I'll go back. It's okay.
I'll add, I did learn today at the tech conference at WSU that Workforce Alliance would be a great partner for something like that. And they allot up to, I believe for certain people, they'll pay up to 500 hours.
Oh, right.
And they'll help with resume building and different things of that nature. And it seemed as if they were super eager to find partners for that. So that could be a potential partner for you.
And I believe Workforce Alliance is working at the Walters branch, helping customers as they come in with resumes.
I love it. Thank you.
Oh, I remember my question. Are you getting a good pool of applicants? Is that a concern or are you guys still good about that?
I believe we got a good pool of applicants. I don't think I can say anything else.
Nope, that was what I
Yeah,
needed to know.
we got a good.
Better than we don't have any.
I would have been extremely sad if
Yeah.
we didn't have any qualified applicants. Extremely sad.
Is there anything that can be done and worked along before you get the new librarian in place? Any of these connections that could be made?
I'm happy to make connections with folks, but I'm not sure that we're ready to.
Like the workforce thing, can they
Mhm.
contact you?
I can reach out to Workforce. I know some of those folks.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And Rwanda and Nicola.
Thank you.
Doing Joseph's good question, he's diving into that report. I just want to clarify, there was a mention of the computers and access. You said in 2017, there were 9 computers and there are still 9
8.
or 8 today. It's the same number.
Same.
Does that, you were talking about the CIP and the annual budget, would buying those new computers and, because you said software, is the hardware, the actual computers, is that in the CIP or is that an annual where you would pool to acquire new computers or replace those computers?
I don't know that.
Because I was also curious if those were the same computers from 2017.
No.
Okay, because I was just thinking that now with access to so many, there's so many more computing options at lower prices now compared to then, that could be possible.
We're also seeing more folks who really want access to Wi-Fi because they have their own devices. So I know down at the Advanced Learning Library, those computers are not always full. So if we need an extra computer, they've got some. But right now, you know, the computers are not full all the time. If computers were full all the time every day when we were open, I would certainly be for more.
But to that point, I remember when the hotspot program was unrolled, all were always slammed and immediately filled on that. Would expanding that program come from CIP or the annual?
I also just want to add that the computers are not full, and I respect that, but the hours of operation.
That's the
So
problem.
I just want to add that caveat, that's what the data says.
Yes, when it was studied several years ago, the primary reason that our customers came into the Maya Angelou branch was for computers. And we to this day see many folks who come in just to use the computers. They don't necessarily ever check out a book or a movie.
And I want to know, I appreciate everything you all do. I love everything you all do, and I hope you don't think I'm being a thorn in your side.
Not at all.
I also just want to
You're putting me on
elevate
the
that.
spot, but that's okay.
But I'm also willing to work with you, so you just tap me in, coach, whenever you're ready.
Okay.
Anybody else in that, questions or comments?
Yes, so, I do sit on the library board, and I will just say that as far as the librarians are concerned, with the, and the hours with the Angelou Library and with the Walters Library, it comes up literally every meeting, we talk about it every time. I think one of the things that should be reiterated about these library positions that maybe is getting not as much attention due to the discussion about the hours, is that the libraries now are generally staffed, I think, by paraprofessionals and part-time employees, whereas these positions are full credentialed librarian positions. So not only does that lend to an extension of branch hours, but also the robustness of the programming at those branches, what they can and cannot do at those different branches. Also, the Wi-Fi comes up all the time, every time. And there's always ongoing discussions about ways that the library can increase its access to Wi-Fi, such as it goes further away from the library building. There's also always discussion about the hotspots and laptop rentals, because as far as I know, they're still on a backlog, and like they always have been.
I haven't checked lately, but I think there's probably 100 people waiting for a hotspot.
Right. And what you were saying about research and that's one of the things that I really like about what the library is doing now, is really leaning into how can we make the library more accessible to the communities it serves. And a lot of that is digitally and through other programs that don't necessarily require you to get to the library. But that's all I wanted to say.
Well, digitally, ebook lending is now, if ebooks were a branch, it's the biggest branch, if that makes sense. More people are checking out electronic books than any other format. And yeah, the Angelo and Walters branches are staffed entirely by part-time paraprofessionals. Those are half-time jobs. Many of those folks have many years of experience, but those branches have not had a librarian on staff. So this is something new. Looking forward to seeing what we can shake up, what we can do with that.
I have one more question, sorry. Do you guys ever give away books? I mean, is there like a big book drive, or can I come and get like some books to give away?
It depends. Our youth services librarian sometimes has a super secret stockpile of children's books that she might be able to give away at events. But I'm not aware of anything for books for adults.
But no, I'm talking for kids.
For kids, we should probably hook you up with Racine and Bookmobile and see what she can do for
Connected
you.
with Racine, and she's actually coming out to an event tomorrow. Yes, so I'll talk to her.
Talk to her,
Yes.
because she would have a better idea of what sort of giveaways.
Okay.
We would have.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking all of our questions and comments. Is there any members of the public who would like to ask questions, give comments to the library, or anyone online? Not here. Thank you so much. for your time. Appreciate you. All right, with that, without objection, we receive and file all reports from staff. We are going to skip or move, without objection, the HUD presentation to be after our zoning, case number 15 agenda item. And then move on to the report agenda. Updates, issues, and reports from DAB members. Anything going on around the city? Did we just start being here? If anyone wants to give updates.
Only thing on mine, 1 or 2, there's Evergy meeting is still set for October 17th.
Be about
Okay, never mind. Then, and then still waiting to hear on a final date for one with Wesley. And then on a personal note, this will probably be my last DEB meeting. My wife and I purchased a home over in District 6, so we're in the process of moving. So it's, yeah, really sad. I love this group. Love hanging out with y'all. I might still be causing trouble over in District 6 to be determined.
Good trouble.
Yes, exactly. But I really helped learn from y'all and I just want to express my appreciation.
We're losing good DAB members. Keep leaving us.
Yeah, sorry.
Congrats on home.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
I just want to thank everyone in the community who helped spread the word and came out for the annual chili cook-off on Saturday. It was a record-breaking turnout and record-breaking fundraising, including through our 50-50 raffle. And 100% of those proceeds go to our Good Life grant, and we'll have those grant portal open with the Wichita Community Foundation in the next couple of months. And if you know of smaller nonprofits that often don't qualify for some of these larger grants, whether because of their size or their history, years since formation, this is a great opportunity for them to get that seed funding to get a good start. So again, Wichita Community Foundation, it's the Wagon Masters Good Life grants. And yeah, I think 100% of proceeds go to it. I think we'll probably have like 7. I can't say, we're still figuring out our numbers, like 70,000 or something from it. So thanks everyone for the help. We'll be back at the end of September next year. And I didn't get to even, I was working it so much, I didn't even eat any chili. So I want to put that in perspective. Couldn't grab any chili, didn't even have time to eat any chili, even though we had so much chili. Yep.
I don't think I have any board announcements actually.
Nope, none for me.
I might have something when we get into other parts of the, we get into other areas, not right now.
Is there any, are we missing any demo members online? Is there anyone? We're in full. Oh, it's not. I'll give it a chance. Kathy, any update? With that, we'll move into the public agenda. There's no scheduled items. Now, this is an opportunity for members of the public. If you're not here for one of the zoning cases and you just want to address the DAB, address the council member, ask any questions, this is your opportunity now in the agenda to do so. One online. Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to council member updates and announcements.
All righty, before I get started, we have a guest here, and I did not tell her I was going to introduce her, but Kitty is here. I invited her to our district advisory board meeting. She is a part of the Empowering Citizen-Led Democracy Professional Fellow Program sponsored by the State Department and joins us from Hungary.
Colleague of mine from Bulgaria and the Netherlands. Nice to meet you. My name is Ahmed. I'm from Bulgaria, and I'm also attending joining us from this program, sponsored by the State Department.
Welcome. I've had a great conversation with Kitty and said, hey, come check out what we do at District Advisory Board. I did warn her we had a lot of zoning cases. So. But I definitely want to welcome you here. Glad that you were able to come. I also enjoyed the chili cook-off this weekend. Lots of people. The lines to get chili were really long, so I didn't get to sample as much as I wanted to, and I unfortunately stepped out of the line of the actual winner of the chili. I'm not happy about that, but great event. Also, again, before getting into too many of my updates, just want to thank Josh for his service for the District Advisory Board. Did a wonderful job advocating for your neighborhood and asking a lot of really good questions. And happy to see you get the house in D6. Sorry to see you leave us, but I'll be recommending that there's an opening. You get to join the D6 DAB as well. So.
Yep. Maggie and the rest of the group over there.
Thank you again. To answer the question I was asked, yes, October 17th has not changed on my calendar. So the Evergy public meeting for the Redbud Trail is the 17th at the Marcus Welcome Center on campus. That notification, I think, went out already. If not, it should be going out pretty soon. The KCC has been notified. No confirmation yet on who will be there. Commissioner Duffy had always been coming, but that she was not reappointed by Governor Kelly. So I don't know who will be in attendance at that meeting, but October 17th.
You said that was at the Welcome Center, no, Metro?
Yeah, Marcus Welcome Center. Metroplex was not available.
Is that on the main campus or is that the one?
Main campus right by Starbucks.
Okay.
21st Street. Also on public meetings, this Saturday is our District 1 breakfast. We will have transit with our guests to talk through all the happenings in transit, the steps the council is taking towards the transit survey, community engagement, what that's gonna look like. And it's a lot of stuff going on in transit that I don't think most people realize. So that should be a really good breakfast discussion. And then right after that at 1:30 over at the Boys and Girls Club, we'll have our public meeting about the 29th and Grove contamination site. This meeting is being led by Sedgwick County and the City of Wichita, not KDHE. This meeting will be focused on getting people answers now for cancer screening. Information about that, the resources that have been raised thus far, next steps with Union Pacific. So learning about the 5 areas in which they're looking at to put these wells in, trying to get toward design. People will have an opportunity to go to tables and get questions answered at those tables, as well as come back and ask those same questions if they want, or different questions in front of everyone. And we'll talk about our communications plan as well to make sure that we are doing what's necessary to reach people where they are. We've already sent out a postcard to everyone within that plume. So 2,700 postcards have went out already. We'll be asking people if they got that. Still, again, it's not perfect when you send out mail, so we want to make sure folks got it. We sent it to property owners as well as tenants, so everyone should have been notified about that. But this meeting is one that definitely will have some really good information, and we'll be starting to work to let people know that they can get their cancer screenings for free until we run out of money. And we do have a large amount of money that has been raised, so that's pretty good. 1:30, Boys and Girls Club. And then, other than that, council has done some work. If you did not see, we did pass funding support for 2 downtown restrooms, one at Napster Park, one at A. Price Woodard. We got the funding situation worked out on that. There will also be 2 hydration stations, which technical term for water fountain. Those will be out there as well. I believe one at Napster Park, and forget where the other one's at, but those did pass council. Neighborhood improvements have been funded. Pedestrian crossing enhancements were funded, passed by council. We changed our internal health, vision, and dental plan. The HUD consolidated annual report was passed. For those who don't know, I always have to abstain from that due to the funding that Habitat gets from the federal government, so always abstain from those. We also changed we amended the Old Town overlay to allow tattoo and body piercing facilities. Did not do that before. We're still working on the conversation to have commissioned EMTs in the fire department versus just EMTs that don't follow under their pension plan. That conversation's ongoing with the fire chief and the union. Hopefully we'll have some answers on that soon. Also, council did vote to receive the National Trust for Historic Preservation Conserving Black Modernism Grant, which for those who've been following the swimming pool at McAfee Pool and the bathhouse, this helps with the bathhouse and preserving that Black art. Excited to see that happen. Cultural funding recommendations were passed. We deferred an ordinance on nuisance parties until December 12th. That started looking at short-term rentals. Staff kind of wrote in everyone into that. Council pushed back and wanted to see a separation and focus right now on short-term rentals and talk about everyone else after that. So we'll probably see that on December 12th. We did pass the regulations for short-term rentals. So that means now that folks who were operating less than 7 days before, who were operating legally, that's no longer the case. So we were able to legalize short-term rentals. The ordinance was not perfect, and some of the things that I wanted to see were not included. And that conversation hopefully will continue to happen. For those who wanted neighborhood protections, the route that was proposed was that neighborhoods come up with a protective overlay. That process has not been completed that I'm aware of. The last time I talked to Scott, it's gonna take a while, and it's not something I was like really rushing on. I want them to have some really good proposal and not just something rushed because I asked for it, so. Yeah. So I did ask that we have that public conversation for folks who have concerns or other ideas on that. Don't have a date on when that's coming up, but planning is working on that. Past that, I think that is most of what might be going on. Police was talked about earlier. I can't go into the details of what the negotiations look like, but I think we've made some positive ground with FOP as well as admin. And I think they will have some recommendations coming to council here pretty soon on what that looks like to support officers, not only with pay and retention pay, but a lot of what I have said behind the scenes is looking at the Jensen Hughes work and get the cultural report that we had implemented within the department. I know that has been a part of the conversation as well. But like was said earlier, you know, money is not everything in this. So a lot of it is the culture of the department. And the culture is not always the racial things we see. There are other things going on in the department that need to be fixed, and Chief Sullivan is working towards some of that. But until we have a department where our officers want to recruit other people to be officers, it's going to be tough to grow those numbers. And that means that some hard conversations are going to have to be had and some changes made in order to make that happen. So we should have some more information here pretty soon if everyone continues to say yes to talk to the public about. But right now, I know that they are working kind of generally in the same direction and things seem to be doing well. And to the library comments that we've had, that was a great update. We've also had, or I've also had a meeting with PPMC, who was working on plans with the library to make improvements, and our library director, who is actively seeking some funding to make some not only renovations, but potential expansions at Maya Angelou Library as well. That wasn't talked about because it's not finalized yet, but if all of those things work out, DAB will receive a report on what that looks like going forward. And the conversation we have is pretty exciting, so I'm hoping that it does work out and the funding sources that she's looking for come through. But a lot of stuff is in the works for Maya Angelou Library. And lastly, next month's District 1 breakfast will be the email I sent to each of you and everyone else I've appointed to be able to come to the breakfast and talk to those in attendance and those online about the service that you have, not only on the district advisory board, but if there are any other boards you serve on or the other folks I've appointed, because I have found that people really enjoy hearing from the folks who represent them on these different boards. I don't think that happens everywhere else, but the first time we did it, a lot of folks came up and said it was good to hear about what's happening with animal control or library or parks, and to know who it is to talk to about this and what's going on. So that's always a good breakfast. It's a lot later in the year than I normally do it. Normally I do that in the summer, but it's just kind of how it worked out. So got a few confirmations. You all are invited. You don't have to speak as a group. You can speak individually or as a group if you want to, just about your experience on DAB, what happens here, and if there's any changes you'd like to see. I don't take offense to that type of stuff. It just gives me more work to do. So with that, I will be quiet. And if you have questions or comments, happy to answer. Questions, comments? So first.
No comment. I mean, I do have a comment. Sorry. Thanks for. Thanks for coming to the Leadership Wichita Networking event for elected officials. I thought it was great to see you and a few other council people there, members there. And I know you have a ton of things to do, like all the council members, but the fact you showed up really makes a difference. So thanks for being here.
When did the short-term rental regulations go into effect?
I have to go back and look at my packet. Oh, Phil.
So with the short-term rental, the zoning code updates have to go to each county. The fact that it went to the city first and it really is only affecting the city, the county, the zoning that's actually in the county, they said, nope, we're not going to any update to the zoning. Code. Anyway, so even though we have not gone to the county to officially adopt it into the zoning code, the fact that the city passed the ordinance and the ordinance has had second reading, has been published, it is now live. Like staff has been working in our department to make sure we have all of our resources so that if people need to find them, get the application, update our website to make sure the facts are updated with the new information that came out from the ordinance. We kind of held our breath of like what's finally going to be passed, and now we're doing some back end work to make it all officially live. But yeah, people can apply for administrative permit if it's not or occupied, or if they fit the bills where they just need a license.
Thank you.
It's relevant to this. I know I could dive into the ordinance, but a quick take. For those that are then operating now, and you're saying it is in effect currently within the city, do they have a grace period before
Yes.
enforcement? How long will that be?
Yes, so owner occupied, which means they don't need the administrative permit, it essentially is a bed in breakfast. They have 6 months before their grace period ends. Non-owner occupied, meaning they would have to do the administrative permit and the licensing, they have 12 months before enforcement is going to start. Again, so we're still in the non-enforcement phase of it, with the grace period knowing, last estimated is now 700 units in Wichita. But yeah, so it's not like if somebody goes out and files a complaint and say, I know that's an Airbnb. We would just provide them a notice and say, well, now you need to come into compliance.
I guess if y'all are doing enforcement off the fees in part, that makes sense too. And then are y'all having the same fee for owner occupied as well as, is it the same fee amount?
So there's a fee for the license and there's a fee for the administrative permit. So if you don't need the administrative permit and you only need a fee for the license.
What are those amounts?
I don't remember what the license is, but the administrative permit is $250 for the renovation. Should the necessary opposition be met, then it actually has to upgrade to a conditional use, which means it will go through the approval process and come before CAP. Then they have to pay the difference to whatever the conditional use, normal conditional use fee, which for this, I believe it's considered a residential use, $450 versus $250, so they have to pay the difference. But initially, it's $250. The notification is a little bit different than a standard administrative. Working with the short-term rental community, the fears of putting up a sign to say this is a short-term rental. So we're actually doing more than just the sign, like they actually have to notify all the properties that touch their property and are across the street. So it's abutting and contiguous are the right words, but anybody who touches your property line or people across the street, they will get a letter in the mail. Or the owners will get a letter in the mail. You have not crossed that bridge yet. And those are also the eligible properties to, essentially protest and make it go up to the conditional use level.
And though these fees, are there gonna be any annual recurring fees or is it just one time?
Licensing, and forgive me, when it got really into the nitty gritty, I was not quite as heavily involved because you see the stack of papers I have. But I know the licensing is reoccurring, and the council member can potentially correct me if I'm wrong. It is reoccurring to some degree. I don't remember if it was annual or every 2 years. Annual. So the licensing has to be renewed. Zoning, if the zoning is approved, then it's approved just like it kind of any other zone.
So you would change the zone, why would you change the zone?
Essentially, it'll act like a conditional use. So now it's in a sense, more of a use exception. So like, just like in our packet tonight, we have 2 conditional uses for accessory apartments. essentially like that, they're just not, they just don't start out as conditional uses. It was decided to leave it at an administrative level at first. And again, the notification was all the people who touched the property and across the street, and then if 51% of those properties protested or provide opposition against it, then it's upgraded to a conditional use. It has to go through the full public hearing process, so it's not just an administrative approval.
When you say protest, that means signs of protest petition against it submitted or just voice opposition?
It's a good question, and I will follow up with that. Again, we had so many iterations of this that it was hard to keep track of things. I would have prepared better had I known.
Oh, no, you're great.
So we can update you.
Yeah, we're gonna be here all night.
But I know, like, especially with the process going so long, I know that was like one of the concerns I brought up last meeting, with the final iteration.
Yeah.
Being potentially a little different than what Crown Heights had gotten presentations on. The reasons I'm bringing up the fees and what was finally decided is y'all move forward is more a crowding out or even like a discriminatory effect, especially on those who are socioeconomically disadvantaged, trying to enter into this market where, yeah, the out-of-state investor has the money to pay these fees. But then I'm looking at folks looking at to get an accessory apartment, to finally like to get that additional money. I'm very mindful of that. I'm also mindful of that when it comes to neighborhoods. I want those rules and guidelines on setting a protective overlay to be just as the council member said, very purposeful and considerate, because my gut, if it's just kind of Wild West, is that's a great way to, if you're just a one person who's making a little extra income and that's how you're being in this neighborhood now, that's a great way to then kind of be crowded out of that, or maybe to not decide not to move to a certain neighborhood as well. Yeah. All right, thanks for this little segue on STRs. Are there any other questions or comments for the council member from DAB? Anyone, members of the public, questions or comments for the council member? Okay, anyone online? Seeing and hearing none, we'll go ahead, receive and file, and move on to our first zoning case. 004.
So on 2343 is a conditional use request for vehicle equipment sales at 1305 North Hillside, which is currently zoned limited commercial. Limited commercial property need conditional use in order to allow outdoor vehicle sales. Staff is recommending denial. That was heard by NAPC last Thursday on the 28th, and they also recommended denial. There have been no public opposition to this, but this is also not too far south of a recent case on the north side of 15th Street that had the same result. I believe I saw the applicant here early in the meeting, and I don't know where he went, but anyway.
So give the chance, if the applicant does pop in.
Yeah.
Fine.
So overall, the applicant plans to construct, if approved, a 32 by 32 foot building. This property used to have a fast food restaurant on it. It had been demolished. So he wants to put about 1,000 square foot building on the site, which would act as the office. He would look to sell up to 10 to 15 cars, in addition to providing required off-street parking that you would need. There are supplementary use regulations, which are another layer of rules on top of the zoning that vehicle and equipment sales must follow in the commercial zoning. There's a review of those in your staff report. For time's sake, I'll just, we have a question about it. Most of them state, if it's approved, the applicant has to, conform to. So couple I'll just specifically mention is that in LC zoning, these rules do not allow elevated platforms. That's usually one of the bigger things. But in terms of like lighting and noise and screening and all those things, most of the review in that staff report was like, if approved, they have to follow these standards. The character of the neighborhood, this property is on hillside. As you can see, the character of the neighborhood is predominantly residential around it. There's a little bit of commercial zoning to the north and east. The undeveloped parcel on the north side of 12th Street on the east side of hillside is zoned general commercial. The properties to the west are zoned 2-family residential. The property to the south, which is the parking lot, is being multifamily. And then property to the southeast across hillside as well as zoned residential. So even though hillside is a major road, 12th Street is a local street, and truly it's a little bit more of a residential character in the area. The comprehensive plan identifies the site of appropriate commercial uses, but we usually goes down to the next level, which are our locational guidelines. And we find that it is not in conformity with the locational guidelines, which talk about that major commercial employment centers and uses be at the intersection of arterial streets. So a little bit more appropriate towards like 13th and Hillside and not necessarily at 12th side. In terms of land use compatibility, these type of higher intensity usage should be separate and away from especially established low density residential, which is what we talk about the characteristic area being more low density residential. The places for people plan encourages infill that is contextual to the environment. We don't feel like this is contextual at all. And then even though it's an area of opportunity, which typically would garner investment to help bring up the neighborhood, this type of use in terms to which offers for people is not necessarily the top. And then finally, the central northeast area plan encourages more neighborhood serving retail and personal services. This isn't typically neighborhood serving and is definitely not personal service. So we don't find it performance with most of our plans, which is why we're recommending denial for this. Again, overall, we are not recommending approval. There are conditions of approval should this board want to recommend approval. Those conditions and there's something to consider. That is something we always provide to the boards as a consideration when you recommend denial. They're not in there to say they would apply. It's just if that's the way it goes, then you have them to go front. Again, for time's sake, I think I will just leave it out. Again, we haven't had any neighborhood opposition, but planning commission recommended denial on number 3.
Did they add to the staff reasoning at all in their denial decision?
No, they more or less agree with staff's analysis.
Well, if the agent applicant does pop in while we're having discussion, just let us know to get the chance. But we'll go ahead and then see right now for, so if you're here for a zoning case, what we usually do is the city staff will present, then DAB members will ask questions to the city staff, clarifying around the application. And then once we're kind of at that point, we're going to take it to we let the agent applicant present usually for a few minutes. And then there will sometimes be questions for the agent applicant from DAB. And then we'll give it to the public, and the public, y'all can take as long as you want. But if someone says a prior point that you agree with, you can just reference that instead of reiterate it. And that is your opportunity to speak then. Because once we close it from the public, we will go back to the DAB, and that's the point that the DAB members can make motions and debate and vote. So I'll be very clear when I say it'll be opportunity for the public to speak. That is your moment, and we're very, like, I try to be very flexible and generous. Like, if you forgot to say something and you need to still say another point, please do so. We don't want you to feel like your voice is limited here at all. So this would be usually the portion where the agent applicant would present. So I would just say, what we'll do is let any members of the public speak to this, to give a chance then for that agent applicant to then maybe speak after. If there's anyone here online or in person who would like to speak to this case. If not, I will bring it back to the DAB to start discussion. Continue discussion.
Just make a motion to deny.
You can do that.
Okay.
All right, there's a motion to deny per staff recommendations and a second. All in favor of the motion to deny, say aye, a positive sign. Who votes on this? Aye. Any opposed to the motion to deny? Unanimous vote, denied. Is there still?
We don't have board member online.
Okay.
Eva, a board member?
Yeah.
Move on to 4.4.
Moving right along, COM 2344 is also a conditional use for vehicle equipment sale. This is a little unique. This is at the 13th corner. It's about a mile to the east.
Excuse me, we can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'll speak
I
up.
don't know if that might work. or
Thank you.
not.
It's not working.
Okay.
I'll just speak up. This one is at 4615 East 13th Street. This is a little bit unique that in 1993, a use exception, which is now what we use as a conditional use, was approved to allow the mechanic shop to display up to 2 vehicles for sale. The applicant is wanting to expand the opportunity to display. Anna, can you go to the aerial map, please? In 1993, when the use exception was under consideration. So the red box is the site that we're looking at, the building inside, that's the mechanic shop. The paved area behind the building in 1993. And there's a requirement in the zoning code that all display and storage areas need to be paved. And so the site was a little bit more limited in where they could park cars for customers and where they could park cars for display. And so when it came down to the number of parking spaces that they had to provide for the mechanic shop and for vehicle sales, they had 10 spaces available and they needed 8 of them for their parking requirement. And so that left only 2 spaces available for display. Since then, they have paved the portion that's behind the building, which allowed them to utilize more of the property for either display or storage or parking. And so he's coming to increase that number. There's no specified number. If you look at the site plan, he's got a lot of spaces marked as display, but that could vary based on the size of the vehicle. And there really wasn't an intention of, well, I want to do X amount, because it really will truly be limited on the number of vehicles he can put on the property. Knowing that display spaces don't have to follow standard parking spaces. You know, you can literally just park from bumper to bumper if you wanted to. So all of that to say, the site plan shows up to 21, if you count all those squares. I think that's probably a little bit estimate of how many vehicles could actually be parked on there for display. But the overall intention is just to allow more than 2. He can still meet his 8 parking requirements that the zoning code would require. The mechanic shop is still in operation. He offices out of the mechanic building. And again, just looking to basically have 2 uses on the site and extend one of the uses he already has.
It looks like he still has like 20 spots or something on the backside there, where he's not marking display. Yeah. What's his parking requirement?
8.
8, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to point out that in this, you also say he can't have certain things. He can't have string lights. He can't have little flags and banners and things. So it's not as disturbing to the entry to the neighborhood. And this location is completely surrounded by other like commercial or something properties. So it's unlikely that the noise when he goes to run a machine to put new tires on a vehicle, that it's going to keep anybody up. My only concern is maybe noise at night, because if he does go to an auction and buy a bunch of cars and decides to work on them 24/7 to put those out there for resale, it could make enough noise to affect the neighborhood. It's just a.
Right, well, unfortunately to that, kind of to your point, a mechanic shop is allowed right now. That's not under consideration.
Right, the question would be, is there a limitation on hours of operation?
No,
There is none.
there is a noise ordinance in Wichita, like if he's,
That's it, that's for everybody and everything, so we're covered.
yes.
Thank you.
So overall, unlike the other one, given the location and kind of the history of this property, staff is recommending approval of this one. The comprehensive plan identifies it for commercial uses. The locational guidelines talk about the intersection of arterial roads. You know, this is just one property west, and when you really think about the commercial uses north of it, that's the furniture warehouse used to be the neighborhood market for Walmart. You know, this is much more in like the very commercial hub of 13th and Oliver. Yes, it's on a local street, which is Delrose, but it's just a different circumstance of the environment around it. To your point, there's a commercial property to the south of it.
Even across the street, you know,
Yeah.
in both directions across the street is.
Places for people, we say it's in partial conformance. Places for people is a little tricky plan. We feel like this is a more contextual in terms of its use because it's already a mechanic shop. Again, there's much more commercial surrounding it. It's not a residential area. And then the central neighborhood northeast. Again, partial conformance. It's not a neighborhood serving retail or personal services. But it is retaining an existing business. That was another goal in the plan. Where though not the type of business that the plan is really looking for, it is an existing business. And he's able to grow his business a little bit, and it might actually ensure the vitality of the mechanic shop, which is a little bit more neighborhood serving. So we find it's in partial conformance because it meets one but not the other. So again, staff is recommending approval. We have revised the conditions of approval that were initially approved in 1993. Those are listed in your staff report. They're all pretty standard. Couple of things I'll point out, no sound projecting devices or loudspeakers shall be used to be heard beyond the property lines. That was a condition in 1993. So again, it doesn't mean you can't have outdoor speakers, but you just should be able to hear the sound past the property lines. So that's pretty quiet. You can't be blasting music all over the place, because if you're a property away and you're hearing it, technically it's too loud.
I do like your number 12, Philip. This has come up, that it's attached to
Yes.
the repair business and is not in perpetuity.
Correct. So again, for time's sake, I haven't heard public comment about this one, opposition or support. This one was approved by the planning commission on consent, which means the planning commissioners didn't have questions or concerns about it. So 13-0 vote. I do not see the applicant with us this evening, but I will stand for questions that you may have.
Questions around the application for Philip?
Just a small point of clarification for me, number 11 for the BZA 1293 conditions of approval, this would be like, because right now, for they can only sell 2, would approval of this be changing it to whatever amount they end up putting on surface, or would that be a
Yes,
separate?
basically they governed by their site plan, and we have asked for them to provide a revised site plan.
That was gonna be my next question,
Yeah.
because this is,
So this is
Unsigned.
not.
So we're not adding a strict number to say you can only do this many. It'll be based governed by the site plan.
would it be helpful in revision of the site plan for us to provide a number, or?
If you can, that will bump it up to a non-consent item at council, that should dissuade you.
Using it on the site plan. That's the part of the difficulty is we see that number. And y'all are gonna be giving feedback, city will, moving forward, where they wouldn't be even allowed to do more than 2 until they've worked kinks out with y'all on a site plan.
Right.
So it'd be hard for us to even know what that ultimately would be.
Yeah.
Until you all figure it out anyway.
So again, it will be governed by the site plan. And, you have to maintain his off-street parking, so you can't just like clutter the site with cars.
That's the thing I see here too. I know it's, sorry, it's more commentary, but it seems relevant to cluttering the site was unlike some of these others we've seen, similar applications. Well, one is that there's already a facility here. There's 4 entry points for traffic, as well as 2 gated points and a gated point on the north side of the lot. So that was my concern, if you're cluttering it, getting access to the other parking spots, but that it seems uniquely situated compared to some of the other sites we've seen.
When it came to the number of vehicles that can be parked on for display, with a vehicle repair shop, they are allowed to store vehicles as an accessory, knowing you might have a car waiting to be fixed and it has to be on site. And so when we thought about, well, they're just gonna be, this is gonna allow them to park a whole bunch of cars on the site. Well, you technically can do that now. They're just technically waiting to be repaired, or maybe they've been repaired and waiting to be picked up. So the site already kind of allows for the storage of vehicles. Regardless of if they're there for repair, this would just allow them to also be displayed for sale, and if he wants to. So he might have to use some of his display spaces for storage of a car waiting to be fixed or something like that. It will be up to him to decide what his balance will be. But that was something that played into our decision making of, if he really wants to pile it in like a site plan shows, technically he can do that now with vehicles waiting to be repaired.
Quick question on number 8, your body of vendor work, so basically, you don't want cars up there that the bodies are
Right.
falling apart,
Well,
half off.
Right, and when you're doing fender work and paint and things like that, that becomes vehicle repair general, which is not even allowed in the commercial zoning. So that's also kind of reinforcing the base use. You can do mechanic work inside of an enclosed building, but you're not allowed to do body or fender repair because that's a completely different use category on itself.
That is another thing to underscore is the repair work cannot be done outside the
Correct.
building. It's all done
Correct.
inside.
Any other questions for Philip? Members of the agent applicant was not online or any
I haven't
members?
seen him online either.
The public have comments or questions around this case? Hearing none, we will take it back to the DAB. Additional comments, points, questions? Board member.
Good steps, recommendation.
Second. And there's a second, motion to approve staff recommendation.
Who seconded that?
And all in favor of approving with staff recommendations, say aye, make a sign. Aye. Any opposed? None opposed, unanimous approval. Moving on to 4.5.
It's conditional use 2345. The applicant is requesting an accessory apartment in two-family residential located at 408 South Belmont. Staff are recommending approval with condition. This also served the planning commission on Thursday. It was approved on consent, so no staff, no commissioner concerns or public comment was had a planning commission. An accessory apartment is allowed in TF3 zoning when it's with a single family dwelling. No, in TF3 zoning, you can have a duplex. An accessory apartment to a duplex would have to be accessory to one of the duplexes, and that just gets tricky. So accessory apartments allow two single family homes. This is a single family home. The Unified Zoning Code has those supplementary use regulations, again, additional rules on top of the base zoning. There's 4 of them for accessory apartments. It'll be allowed on the same lot as a single family dwelling unit. There can only be one. The appearance has to be compatible with the main dwelling. And the character of the neighborhood, the accessory apartment shall remain accessory to and under the same ownership as a single family home. The water and sewer services have to be under the same account. That also helps ensure that it's under the same ownership and you don't get a condominium situation. But all the other like franchise utilities like electric, gas, TV, all those can be separate, but water and sewer specifically have to be under the same thing. So those are the 4 requirements for accessory apartments in the zoning classification. Properties surrounding it are a mixture of TF3 and single family zoning developed with single family homes. And mostly single family homes are just low density residential in general. The comprehensive plan identifies it as appropriate for residential. Wichita Places for People, this is something that's part of the Places for People plan, providing middle housing, some other opportunities for housing types within the established area, maximizing public investment with water and sewer infrastructure. So staff is recommending approval subject to the conditions in your staff report. You'll note that most of those conditions are like a reflection of the 4 supplementary use regulations. We just kind of write them in the conditions so people know they're there and don't forget about them. Again, for time's sake, we have the applicant here with us this evening. She can answer any questions you might have for her. But again, for time's sake, there was some opposition in this. There's comments attached to your staff reports. Generally concerned with possibly turning it into an STR, short-term rental, but now those rules are in place. So they would have to go through extra measures in order to be able to do that. Possible concerns about height or appearance, but I guess if there's people who want to speak this evening, if they can, this evening, we'll leave the comments to them. But I can stand for questions you might have for staff.
I'm not sure I heard everything correctly, but there is some protection against this thing being turned into a short-term.
Right, now that
That
the
is-
city
that
approved
exists
it,
already.
yes, the applicant would have to go through the zoning, the extra zoning measure and the licensing measure.
I think that pretty well responds to some of the problems that the 2
Correct.
people have.
Yes.
Would there be, this is what height restriction should this be subject to, because it looks like they plan to expand it pretty far.
Yes, they have to meet all setback requirements, height restriction, when it's a detached structure. If it's not built to meet the setbacks that the house has to follow, for example, that's 6 feet off your side property lines, 20 feet off your rear property line. If it's going to have these setbacks for an accessory structure, which are much smaller, it can only be 60% of the height that's allowed in that zoning district. So for example, in TF3, that's 35 feet is standard height, 60% of that is 26 feet.
You said in the presentation, I just reminded us sort of that when you were saying only one's allowed for accessory apartment, are you saying, was that only one allowed on the same block, only one allowed on the property?
On that property, you can only have one accessory
So-
apartment on each block. So they can't come back in the future and ask for conditional use to have another accessory apartment.
Can we look at that? Yep, that picture right there. You had to know. So this, where the fence is, it would be to the right of that grass, there would be the extension, correct? So basically, it's
I'm sorry, I didn't get your question.
the fence, so to the right of the fence is where the mock is, where the expansion would be, correct? So basically, there's their full backyard then. Because it's narrower than I thought.
Yes, and again, the expansion of the garage has to meet all setback requirements.
Right.
So you can even see there's a little bit of a notch on the backside of the garage, because the garage is not built to current setback standards. It was built prior to our current zoning. And so they're actually building the addition to meet setback standards, or not just to even allow to extend the garage wall. So that's why there's a notch. This is the top of the picture. So the very right-hand corner of the garage, there's a step back in the building, because of the current setback standards that they have to meet.
Can you go down to the next page, that satellite view? Says, I was seeing it's narrow too, but I thought it was interesting seeing the neighboring house basically taking up, doing something almost similar to this, like
Which one are you looking
the
at?
one directly south, you see how they use that backyard space in their garage?
Oh,
It would be almost taking up a similar footprint as that one.
Noticed in one of the objections that this lot has a shared driveway. How does that impact this? Is the line just like it's on their side, they can do whatever the hell they want?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that it's a shared driveway, it's in common, so. It really doesn't change, because whether or not you have an accessory apartment in your backyard or not, like based on right to the driveway.
Any other questions for agent, for the applicant? The applicant. Yeah. Go ahead.
Hey, so my name is Erica Cameron. So the purpose of this application is to house my aging parents-in-law. Less than 5% of properties in the US are accessible to people with disabilities, and this will be built to be completely wheelchair accessible. As someone who has been a wheelchair user in the past, I can tell you that very few properties in Wichita are accessible and affordable. And that is our goal with this property. We tried to talk to our neighbors, all of our neighbors. They all received a letter from us before the application went out. So I was surprised that there was opposition, because we had tried to accommodate their requests. And we're still willing to work with them as well. We won't cast out our relationships, but yeah, this is just for my parents-in-law. We're not planning to rent it out. They're pretty young still. They're in their late 60s, early 70s, but my father-in-law has a degenerative condition. So we're trying to prepare and have a place where he can be safely cared for.
I would just say, like, if this does get approved in your communication with your neighbors, because this is something we're often mindful of, is when we rezone a future owner of that property, right? You can just communicating similar to what Philip said, if this does get approved, that even if someone else buys the property in the future, they would still have to go through the separate process for the short-term rental, just so they should know that. Any questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any members of the public would like to speak in favor or opposition to this online or in person? Okay, with that, we'll bring it back to Deb. Additional discussion? Questions or motion?
Make a motion to approve with the conditions as per staff recommendations. So I'll be taking care of their parents and making them accessible. And that's something I think will benefit if you do decide to move someday, benefit to the future applicant as well.
Second.
Yeah. Input on that. Yeah, this way accessory apartments we've been talking about, yeah. There's a motion and a second for approving with staff recommendations and conditions. All in favor of the approval, say aye, a positive sign. Aye. Any opposed? Opposed, unanimous. Thank you so much. Thank you. Moving on to Ward 7, going to Ward 7.
Yes. So we have zone 2350, con 2347. This is located at 233 North Hillside. Two requests here. One is to rezone the property from general office for limited commercial. And the other is a request for conditional use for the mobile food unit in the city, which is a lot of words to say a food truck. We did learn from the applicant at the planning commission that their idea for a food truck was more like a shaved ice food truck, not necessarily, because they want to, the reason they're going to limited commercial for the building is they want to convert the building into a coffee shop. And then to be able to provide like shaved ice or an icy type food truck in the property. This request had a fair amount of public discussion at planning commission. Particularly from the property owner to the north, the office building, the medical office building to the north, directly next to their building. There's a couple of things at play here. If you want to go to the aerial map, yeah, so the area plaza, just the thing in red, the parking lot to the south has a common, like it's owned by one person, but it's written in there that there's a shared agreement between current property and the three commercial properties north, or the office properties north of them. All of them have a quarter share, meaning they get right to a number of spaces. So that parking lot is to benefit everybody. The comment wasn't necessarily, well, there's a couple concerns about possibly like, well, are they gonna park too many cars? That's privately enforced, that's nothing the zoning can do anyway. But their biggest concern was about the food truck. If you look at the site plan, the food truck was going to be parked basically directly in front of commercial zoning, they can be accessory in the parking lot, meaning they could say, hey, come park here for the day, but they can't stay there every, like, they could come back maybe. Like, I feel like there's a fine line of like, okay, they're not parking overnight, but they're parking in the parking lot every single day. That could probably be interpreted of like, is it really? You know, if WSU wants to throw something at the Metroplex and they get some food trucks to show up or something like that, like. The idea is like, if it's already commercial, it's not necessarily a big deal that a food truck shows up. Have a, you know, something in Lowe's parking lot for, you know, one day, but the idea is it's not supposed to be a staple, not supposed to be there all the time. The conditional use was going to allow it to be there all the time. Right, it wouldn't even have to leave at the end of the day. So that is a caveat that yes, LC zoning would allow a food truck to be parked there accessory. But it can't be there every single day, 24 hours, you know, 24 or 365.
I appreciate that clarification. So I was wanting to know if we needed to maybe approve something even separate, because what I was thinking was, if this is approved, then I wouldn't want to hinder the owner from providing additional
Right.
Food services at certain times and certain seasons because of that, but that makes sense then. That's already included.
Yeah, there'd be nothing to that point, just from my own understanding. If you wanted to put shave ice on the side of it, where there is a parking, probably in parking spot during the summer months. No problem.
Used to be actually multiple.
Yeah. So could you summarize just real quick? Problem with the food truck law?
Just that it was in front of us, huh?
Right, it could possibly block visibility of the sign. Their bigger concern was congestion in the parking lot. Where it sounds like it's already kind of a tight space between, when you think of like, okay, if cars are parked in the stalls. And they have a certain amount of space to back out of those stalls before they get to the sidewalk. And then you're also gonna put a food truck in there, you're really narrowing the drive aisle. And then if the idea was, well, food truck might be for people who are, you know, walking across the drive aisle from the coffee shop, or if people from the neighborhood were to walk there to buy things, if people are standing in the parking lot buying their shaved ice or whatever, like, there was concern of safety of like, you know, they've got office uses there, people coming in and out, you know, throughout the day. They were just concerned about vehicular pedestrian conflicts.
There's a narrow drive area, and I mean, it looks like, just looking at the Google Street View, that maybe there's some space on the side of the building, but since that would include one of the parking spots in the shared agreement, they couldn't.
Thankfully, with the shared agreement, they could park it on the side and still meet their parking requirement with their spaces and their shared spaces. So the parking requirement for the restaurants, I believe it's 7 spaces.
Right, so then I would just want to clarify, the objection was really the placement of the mobile food unit, but you're saying they could put a mobile food unit in this side parking spot.
They could, but again, some of the placement of it would be, well, are people going to be hanging out in the parking lot?
So to that, I live in this area, so I'm really familiar with this parking lot. We used to go to the eye doctor that is in here. Like day to day, it's a really low traffic parking lot. Already. As far as the coffee shop goes, I like the idea because there's already other coffee shops in the area that are even like on the side of what used to be houses. So it is a nice thing to be able to walk to. One of the things that I noticed shortly after moving to this area is one, there's a ton of dogs in this area. Everybody has a dog, but there's nowhere to go with your dog. And so like, if I want to walk my dog and stop at the gas station, I can't, because then I gotta risk having someone steal my dog outside. I like the idea to walk up to food truck or shaved ice or whatever here, because it does provide that opportunity in the neighborhood for people that maybe are out with their pets or kids and don't want to go off on the food stop to do that. And it's not a super busy parking lot. I don't think I see that.
We wanted, because I see this objection about the sign, because that's a pretty low sign. I also get the concern of that there is a very narrow drive then, even with the traffic, if you had the food unit directly in front on the sidewalk there. Is there a way, if we still wanted to make a motion to approve both of these, but then restrict the food unit to the side actually, so it's not off the street sidewalk? Is there a wording that we could use in this
Basically,
case?
a revised site plan to indicate the food truck on the south side of the building or
Just to give the option?
something like that, yeah. Because the stipulation with the food truck is it cannot occupy any required off-street parking. Yes, it would take up a parking spot on the south side of the building, but he has enough in front of his building and with his share of the parking lot to the south that meets his coffee shop need. That parking it on that side does not take away a required parking space.
I definitely wouldn't feel as comfortable with it in the front, but there's so much space and I walk that every day too. I see that lots not used.
Yeah. Because that would then just require a revised site plan, if it were to be approved by council that way.
Yeah, I'm familiar with this parking lot too, and I mean, it's tight if a mobile unit was parked there, but it's common and it would be completely doable, but it makes sense why he's amenable for, to have approved without the mobile unit because it would not hinder him from having a mobile unit. He could still do that on a, Tuesday or Thursday or, once a month, whatever. And so there's no hindrance. We wouldn't be preventing him from offering that. So, yeah, I just.
Do you feel, because I also just want to be careful that I don't want to potentially restrict just to that one single parking spot on the side. Because I would feel, especially if it's a mobile unit, if the owner applicant's able to use that entire lot, I was more concerned about the spaces directly in front. Because that whole lot, it gives so much space, I'm not as concerned about traffic because you have multiple lanes there, versus the one lane in front. So we could still like potentially do a revised site plan of utilizing the parking lot to the south, parking spaces to the south.
It would have to be within this platted lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
In any area that would be,
It would be more, I didn't want to restrict just to that back corner spot
Correct.
if at certain times they wanted to move it forward
Yeah.
within that lot.
My thoughts would be not to even put a stipulation on where it could park. In my mind, I foresee the safest would be where it is currently deemed due to kids, people walking their dogs could just be in a dying lot. And have that as their safety feature versus having to be in the parking lot. So I would think if we could, I don't know, my thoughts are either approve as the planning did with the approval with conditions and not the mobile unit. So then he has his discretion to have a food truck when he would like, where he would like within his spot versus us then deeming, okay, no, you can only park here. No, actually here and having that be a challenge. So those are just my thoughts. I would say we could approve with conditions of the planning and not the mobile food unit, or we would have to then go a little bit deeper and further and think of.
Get the safety point with the sidewalk, but I was trying to also answer then the complaint
For the cars.
from about the signage. Because that was the location that would answer then the complaint and
That possibly lost.
I was gonna ask, would a protective vote, if we approve the conditional use, would a protective vote related with the height restriction and this, can you stipulate that the like entrance or like where the window that the orders are taken be facing hillside? Is that, can we get that minute or is that's a little?
Yeah,
but it's.
And it has to be
it's the same-
So I was thinking this, keep it the way that the recommendation is, then he can bring this truck in and out as he pleases. You can't have it there 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Because my aunt has a business on 13th and Hydraulic, and if somebody put a food truck in that parking lot, it would kill her business. And so I know we're hearing that it's not very busy, but could be.
And that was my clarity point. Thank you. Elle, did you say that it's relatively low traffic? Did I hear that right?
As far as I've noticed, yes, except for like, I mean, on the corner, I mean, the northernmost thing is an eye doctor. That has very minimal traffic. He has maybe 1 or 2 clients at a time. I'm not exactly sure what else is in here. I think there's a nail salon maybe. But I just haven't noticed that parking lot being, there's a lot of parking lots in that area that are, that can be dangerous, especially with the one at Dillon's and the hardware store.
Because that's what I was thinking though, because that lot to the south is never used, and I'm just worried about folks whipping in for the 5 other businesses right next to it, based on the placement. That would be.
But we can't limit what business looks like for the other. Maybe they got some plans. Maybe his business about to just pop off. We
Yeah, I
don't
hope
know.
it pops up, but that's still like trying to take into consideration some of that feedback.
I don't know that, like a food truck would necessarily compete with anything else.
But I think it was more or less the traffic that they were, and by being able to get in and out of the parking
Right, I
lot free.
agree.
Nice, yeah, nice.
Yeah.
But I see that point, that you're like, yeah, they're accessory allowed,
Yeah,
we're
they
not
can have it
restricting them to
anywhere.
park it right
Yeah,
there
anywhere.
by the sign anyway.
Yeah.
Good point. So then it wouldn't,
So it's-
yeah.
It would have to be more
Because
restrictive if we put a restriction on it.
Yeah.
Other than it just has to be on and off the property, but
Right, they still have to park it right there where there's concern,
And then
we can't restrict
they
it.
don't do that.
And then you said he wasn't.
he might not have understood that if he goes to LC, that it could have been an accessory use.
Right,
So.
great. Thank you, Phil, let's take through this. Are we good, it's agent applicant here?
I don't see him here. He was at planning commission. I don't
Okay.
recognize him online. So no, I do not want.
All right, well, we'll just give an opportunity then for members of the public online or in person to speak in favor or against this. Hearing none, take it back to Dab. Any additional comments or a motion?
I recommend we go with staff's approval, with conditions. Is that correct?
Staff or planning?
No,
Yeah, you're saying,
okay. So we want to go with the
Staff.
planning
So
commission.
planning commission is so recommend approval of the zoning,
Yes.
which is to LC, and recommend denial of the conditional use, which would allow a full-time food truck.
you don't deny the food, I just want to be clear. You don't do denial. Even,
But that doesn't exclude him from driving the truck on and off the property.
Exactly.
No, he can have one accessory, it just can't be parked there 24.
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah, cause
I
he's.
second that.
it was more about parking.
Michaela had the first second.
Okay, missed that.
Can I do that motion one more time?
Say that motion for me again.
So.
Planning commission.
Recommend approval of the zoning and denial of the conditional use.
Okay, I'll second that. All right, so all in favor of approving the zoning change and denying the conditional use to permit a mobile food unit, say aye, positive sign.
Aye.
Any opposed to that? Hearing none, unanimous.
You know, we'll be communicating and like you still have it, but just, it's not, it's one place like you were asking.
May open a whole nother opportunity for them to think about all the other food trucks.
How far?
Depends on the city, though. It's just- it's just an stuff more seat. All right, are we moving to 5-4?
Conditional 2348. We talked about something like this already, it's conditional use for apartment and 2-family residential at 247 Neal. That was recommending approval with condition. This one and the last one have not been approved by the commission yet, they will be one as well, so we don't have. Then, again, much like the other one, converting the existing garage into an accessory apartment. The same four rules apply that we talked about the last one, only one is allowed. It has to be under, it has to be compatible in appearance, it shall remain substituted under the same ownership as the principal structure, not be sold or divided into condominium. And then the water and sewer service has to be under the same ownership as the primary structure as well. The neighborhood is zoned, or the surrounding property is zoned single family residential and developed by single family residences. Staff is recommending approval. We find this in conformance with our comprehensive plan and the Wichita Police People Plan. So again, staff is recommending approval subject to the conditions in your staff report. One unique one about this one is calling out that the accessory apartment can be only accessory to a single family dwelling, because it looks like this house may at one point have been a duplex, or just the way it's built with like two entrances. In case like house gets converted into a duplex or something like that. So that's just the different conditions on this one that wasn't on the last one, just kind of based on the specific. So if you look here in the staff report, staff has not received any comments on this one. It has not been the planning commission, so we don't have any idea of what they're looking at, but I can send the questions.
Quick question. If someone were to try to convert the home into a duplex with this, with the approval of the accessory unit, say we do it, would they?
They would have to choose either a duplex as the house or to keep the accessory apartment. Technically, they would have to, they wanted a duplex, they would technically have to like undo things in the dwelling where it cannot be occupied as a dwelling. Got it.
Because that would be free then.
Right. Thank you. So.
And then I noticed on their planning map that there's 3 feet, a 3-foot setback on the back. Is that appropriate, or is that grandfathered in as it was built before?
Yes, okay, so that's technically a side property line, so the south property line, accessory structures can be 3 feet. I don't know if this is the exact survey, so we'll know what the dimensions are, but even if not, like, they're allowed to extend the nonconformity within a certain value of the property without having to come into compliance, and considering the entire value of the entire property, this condition that we would have to. So, yeah.
Questions? Please. See, Asia applicant.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys are here, okay.
Um,
Whatever you feel comfortable, do you wanna?
yeah, I'll just stay there. No, the whole idea of this is to convert the garage into an accessible apartment so that my daughter can live there for as long as she, the rest of her life if she wants to. And like the other woman on Belmont said that there are very few, especially in this neighborhood, there are very few accessible dwellings. And this would be
Specified to exactly what I want.
yeah,
Yeah.
everything about it would be so that she would be able to live as easily as possible. And then I'll live in the front house until her baby.
Thank you.
Just, your college here, or your college here or college else?
Okay.
Who's college?
Kathy.
Was it- Because we had a conversation before, I thought about the tiny houses that,
Yeah, we had the last meeting.
yeah, that they didn't really want them in college.
Well, to be my, with College Hill, they might say that, but there's clearly what is de facto accessory apartments all throughout College. Like, that's what's baffling. Yeah, because there's so many, I think almost every other, just from when I remember was house shopping and looked at homes over there, most blocks have multiple accessory apartments on their garages there. That's, but I think one of these points, Phil, if the places for people plan, I know you said there was a put on the back burner about accessory apartments being de facto administrative. I would say, at the very least, if y'all are during the discussions trying to parse out what could be allowed and what not without zoning proposals, if the primary reason is for accessibility, I feel like that should be a very specific administrative reason.
I would say what's really interesting is now, since we first started to try to provide regulation to Wichita Police People, and then, got involved with zoning code updates and staff turnover and retirements up the wazoo. The housing market has changed, and so it'll be really interesting to have that same conversation in light of where we are in, missing middle housing is kind of the new term. So it'll be really interesting to we're optimistic to bring that up. We're about fully staffed in our advanced planning division, which is what has those conversations. So hopefully now that short-term rental is to bed and nightclub in the city should be to bed, hopefully by the end of the year, we can maybe pick some of those things up. And kind of get it going.
Sorry to sidetrack there, but I just wanted, it seemed relevant, especially with the two cases tonight. I would then want to see, is there any member of the public online or in person who would like to speak in favor or against this? Hearing none, we'll take it back to the DAB for additional discussion, questions or motion.
Second.
Motion approved with a second, with DAB recommendation.
Who was it? Who's the-
Joseph seconded. All right, all in favor of approving the staff recommendations, say aye or positive sign. Aye. Any opposed? Unanimous. Thank you all so much for being here. On a night, we had a lot of cases. Thank you all for your time. Thank you. Moving on to 5-4.
Before I get into shout out to Anna, because DAB 6 had 6 billing cases last month. And she didn't realize she was gonna be filling in for DAB 1. She like emailed us and like, there's no planning cases in District 6 this month, and District 6 has been hit heavy for like the last 6 months. She had been.
You want to join us this season better?
Huge shout out to Anna for stepping in, filling for Octa with a very, very full agenda.
Thank you.
Yes.
We love Anna because she came from our departments. She's doing great work at Evergreen. So. Last zoning case tonight, see, this hasn't been so bad.
We got the last zoning case. It's like, not bad.
Located at 4800 East Douglas, if you're familiar with the hill, it's one of the former T-Mobile shop next to the hill. They are looking for a zone change in general commercial from limited commercial to allow for a microbrewery on site. We've worked with them prior to an application where they came in submitting with the idea of saying, hey, we want a protective overlay. We know we don't want everything else in general commercial. We just need the ability to have microbrewery, which is only allowed first in general commercial. Maybe that should be added to our list. But anyway. There's a ton of information in your staff report about the differences between both C and GC, but I'm going to skip ahead to the protective overlay because that is restricting all the uses to limited commercial like they are now, except for the microbrewery, and restricting the signage to limited commercial, which it is now, so that you don't allow for bigger billboards and things you don't want at this location anyway. So again, for time's sake, there's a lot of information. It's all good information, but the fact of the matter is they like a microbrewery at the commercial intersection, staff is recommending approval. They do conform with the comprehensive plan, which identifies it for commercial uses. It's buffered from the low density by other commercial uses, parking lots, which stop places for people. It's contextual to the environment. It's an area of stability, so this just kind of adds to the momentum in the area. Douglas and Oliver has always been kind of an active staple anyway, and so this is a really great addition to the opportunity there. So we have not heard any comments on this one. It also goes to the planning commission on the 12th, so we don't have any information from them yet. But staff is working with approval subject to the current overlay, which again restricts the uses to limited commercial, but allow for one use of microbrewery, and then the signage restricted to limited commercial as well. And I can stand for questions.
If this microbrewery is open for retail sales, like separate from the hill, like, is there going to be expected additional foot traffic?
I honestly don't know. I'm not okay.
Is this parking lot all right here? I mean, I love the idea.
I mean, they do have to be the parking. I know it's probably parking lot, but yeah, I don't know if they are closer to the restaurant or if they're like.
I would it's more anecdotal, as someone who goes to the Hillsong, this is Crown Heights, and we're getting notice on this. I would expect if they're doing what I suspect they're doing, the foot traffic that would be coming in for the craft brewery is gonna be often at different times than a lot of the foot traffic that the Hill Bar itself was getting. But then to be candid, the Hill Bar, I've not been in there where I've always been able usually to get a spot in that lot, even on higher traffic times, and I've never really felt too packed in there. I know them. Maybe, but I also could see that the walkability of this with the brewery, because Crown Heights doesn't have anything like this. So there was some feedback from some neighbors. I was talking to them about it, that they would probably be more, they currently don't go to the hill as much, but they would go specifically for this. And then they see it more as a walk option for them versus then adding to the traffic flow.
Do you know if it's IPA, stouts, ales?
So
Do you like sour? Do you like sour?
What ABV is at a certain level. When they go required
I actually wanted to ask, I didn't see any mention of parking in here, so is it assumed that they're meeting the parking requirements?
It's a given. I apologize, it wasn't specifically referenced in the report, but if they can, then they would have to come in for an administrative adjustment to reduce it. So there are measures to alleviate if they can't, but it assumes that you're not gonna get an occupancy when it seems that you can't really meet your off-street parking.
I've always wanted to see more signage for parking though, because I feel like a lot of people who go to the hill for the first time, supposed to come off that list, don't realize they can use all those back spots. That's, I guess, my only aside. Is there any other questions for Philip before his agent applicant? You're online.
Not aware, I did, but.
Any other questions for Philip before we turn over to the public? I want to give the chance for the public, online or in person, to make comment or against. Hearing none, we will take it back to the DAB. Additional comments, questions, or maybe? Oh, yes.
Across the street, at the strip mall, there's a big parking lot, catty corner from that corner. Lincoln High, is it Lincoln High?
Yeah.
There's a big parking, like the businesses in that strip mall usually close. What are the hours of the microbrewery gonna be?
I don't know what the hours of operation difference would be because it is a private parking lot across the street. They technically would be in an agreement.
Oh,
to
okay.
use it. I mean, if it's one of those things where if people use it and I'm not condoning people.
Okay, got it.
It's a parking lot, but
Got it.
you know, sometimes they have handshake agreements, or obviously if somebody is using it, it never becomes a problem, that property owner may not mind, but
Sure.
you know, they should probably take the proper steps to have that conversation. They definitely should promote using that because that is for the businesses, and that's a pretty full parking lot most of the time too. But you're right, if there's differences in hours of operation, they can definitely talk with that property owner and say, hey, you can use your parking lot after hours.
Yeah, that's a good point, because you're right, sometimes Livingston's is busy and sometimes it's not, and I would imagine, and there's also that lot across the street from it with the boutique
small
shops.
ones,
Yeah.
yeah.
This smaller one,
The
but I would
boutique
imagine
shop.
if that ends up becoming an issue, then there would, between those three lots, be an opportunity to work in agreement. Especially since Wyandotte, since it's similar. owner.
Watermark book
Yeah.
was there.
Because I agree with you, several of the shops likely don't go past 8 or 9 at night or something like that. And so these restaurants and stuff are open much later.
Yeah,
So
it's
love
not- it's just a fun.
Related to Texas common about the traffic, would there be adjustments to the streetlights or anything of that nature? Just, I've seen folks blow through that intersection.
So you need to talk to traffic engineering. If you, have you downloaded the shot app? There's ways to, like, I've actually done it where like I've been sitting at a stoplight that I feel like, wow, like. I'm living downtown. It's like.
Good advertising.
You know, I'm sitting on like Veterans Parkway / Central at NIMS and like, there's nobody on NIMS and we're sitting there, cars are just piling up on Central and like. This needs to be retimed, but so that's a quick way to get a response submitted to the city. Follow-up with a different question, like, I don't know, maybe you can do everything today, I don't know. What their
I'm moving,
response is,
so
but
I'm not, but.
Well, I do like at that intersection, the brick pathways, because it does kind of reinforce the mentality, be mindful of the walk lane there. All right, I just want to give another chance in case anybody else wanted to say anything about this. All right, Dab, additional questions, comments on the motion?
I'll motion to approve with the protective overlay.
I'll second that. All right. Thanks. Motion. I'm sorry. I usually say, I was like, brown eyes, that's probably be a part of this. All right.
Second that motion.
Thanks. All right, let the record reflect.
Brown eyes.
All right, there's a motion to approve the effective overlay and staff recommendations. All in favor, say aye, positive sign. Aye. Any opposed? None opposed, yes. Thank you so much, Bill.
Please, the business that may or may not be happening, what's happening on my street is not happening as much. Maybe. And then. And then also. There's a laundromat, I'm not even gonna say where, that has a food truck parked in front of it every single day.
Okay.
How do I find out if that's supposed to be there or not?
If you give me an address, I can find out if it's a name.
Out in the-
And again, with food trucks being accessory, I feel like the zoning code doesn't specifically define like how many days a week can it be there, but like, I feel like there comes a time where like it's leaving every night, but it's showing up every day, is it really accessory anymore, right? Where it could be, you know, if it is causing problems in generic document, you could file it, like, to see if it changes. But, so first we look at the commercial zone to allow an accessory food truck, and then it's just a matter of, hey, I happen to, you know, sending the right, you know, report and say, hey, I'm finding that this is really parked here every single day. Yeah,
And correct me if I'm wrong, but you see what's zoned on the GIS website, I do that all the time, it's so fun.
Our laundry mats usually limited commercial.
They are considered either personal care or personal improvement service. So they can be by conditional use in GO. So it just depends, so likely commercial, it just depends on the location. And I'm always more than happy to answer your questions and, you know, help you research things.
And that accessory rule applies to GO too, like,
I
right?
think it's only commercial.
All right, that might be.
Actually, let me. In that case.
Might be relevant.
Gonna get them shut down, I'm just curious.
It's good knowing. Right. All right.
Yeah, it starts with LC, so we would not be allowed in the.
Thanks for all the clarifications on your time, Phil. Appreciate it. All right, we are going then to move back to item number 5. No, we're early.
I thought they were gonna be here so loud.
Alright, my name is Logan Radical, I'm the Assistant Department Director for the City Health and Community Services Department. And tonight, myself and the team are here to speak with you about the upcoming 5-year plan for our entitlement grants, as well as the first program year action plan. So each year, we receive an annual allocation of funds from HUD for community development activities. The 3 entitlement grants that we receive on an annual basis, as a result of our population as well as poverty rate, are the ones that you see on the slide. We have our Community Development Block Grant Program. We call that CDBG. This is by far and large our most flexible funding source, and it can be used for a wide variety of community development needs. We also have our Home Investment Partnerships Program. This is our home grant, and we use this to create affordable housing opportunities for low to moderate income Wichitans. And then the last grant that you see here is our Emergency Solutions Grant, and this is the grant that we have from HUD to address homelessness. You can see our funding allocations for our current program year at the bottom of the slide. CDBG, we're just under 3 million. Home, we're just over 1.7 million. And you can see ESG is a lot smaller, about $250,000 annually. This gives you an idea of what we can potentially expect to receive on an annual basis, but our funding allocations are by formula, and they are set by Congress, and then based on, like I said, our population and our poverty rate, that's how we get to our allocation results. This is about what we received each year in our current 5 years plan. So this gives you an idea of what resources that we're working with. So before I go further into the presentation, I'd like you to kind of keep two questions at the forefront of your mind as we speak with you tonight. First, what community needs are facing District 1 specifically? And then second, what community needs face the city of Wichita as a whole? And so, like I mentioned, we're here to talk to you about our consolidated planning process, which we started this past spring. And so it's really important to educate you on what a consolidated plan is. And so a consolidated plan is a tool that jurisdictions can use to assess both community development needs and affordable housing needs in the context of local market conditions. And we are required to put a 5-year plan together every 5 years, of course. And what it does is it outlines very high level goals and high level spending priorities for that 5-year period. And so for each year within that consolidated planning period, we're required to create what's called a program year annual action plan. So what that does is it brings it down on a more granular level and says, this is how much money in each of these grants that we are going to allocate for very specific activities as a means to fulfilling our goals that we set within that 5-year period. And so really tonight, we're sitting in front of you guys for the first time as part of this process to figure out what those community needs are for District 1 as well as for Wichita at large. We are required to submit our first year program year action plan as well as our con plan, so our 5-year plan as well as the first spending plan for the first year of that 5-year period. We're required to submit that to HUD no less than 45 days prior to the program year starting. And so if HUD likes to make things difficult, our program year does not necessarily fall within the fiscal year of the city. And so like a lot of grants within our department, we're constantly in either a reporting period or planning period, and it doesn't necessarily line up with the city at large. And so for the CDBG home and ESG, our program year runs from the middle of one year to the middle of the next. And so our 5-year plan will run from the middle of 2024 to the middle of 2029. And that first program year action plan will run from the middle of 2024 to the middle of 2025. Before kicking it over to Ryan to give you an idea of how we've strategized these funds in our current 5-year period, I wanted to give you an overview of what our planning process looks like for a con plan and an action plan. So like I mentioned before, we started this process back in the spring with preliminary planning as well as working with our finance department to procure a consultant. So this will be the first time in the recent history that Wichita has actually procured a consultant to assist with the development of the consolidated plan. And though this is the first time we are doing this, this is not uncommon. Lots of jurisdictions across the country will bring a consultant on to help with that community consultations, soliciting public input, and really to get a more objective look at how these funds should be allocated out in the community. And so we will continue those agency consultations with our consultant, as well as the solicitation of public input all the way through the end of October and even past. But at the end of October, we would like to bring a workshop to the city council to just report out on what we've heard so far and what we're thinking as far as direction for the upcoming consolidated plan, get the council's input. And then we will continue to accept public comment through a public survey that we have, and then additional follow-up consultations really through the middle of November. And then that's when really the nitty-gritty of drafting the consolidated plan starts. So fall until the beginning of spring, we'll, in conjunction with our consultant, draft that consolidated plan and annual action plan. And then we will be coming back to you in April during the public comment period. So at this point, we will have a draft plan for you to review. And we will ask your feedback, you know, what are your concerns with the plan we have drafted? What do you like? What are we missing? And so we will be coming back to you as part of that process. And likely be jumping from DAP to DAP because we'll be trying to hit 6 in 1 month. And so after that public comment period is over, we will take that plan back to City Council in May. And then hopefully submit to HUD no later than our deadline, which is May 15th. And so at this point, I will pitch it over to Ryan to give you or Andrew, I'm sorry. He goes by Andrew Ryan.
That's multiple names.
That's
Thanks, Logan. Logan mentioned, I'm gonna go over just our entitlement grants, first with CDBG, kind of give you kind of a rundown of what CDBG is, how it works. But with CDBG, in order for an activity to be eligible, it must meet one of 3 national objectives. It must benefit low to moderate income, prevent summer blights, or address a urgent community need. Obviously, it needs to be used for an eligible spending activity, and it goes without saying. And then at least 70% of spending must benefit low to moderate income persons. Some additional things here, public services, which I'll kind of go over here in more detail about the City of Wichita's public services that we offer through CDBG funding. But there is a limit on public services in the category there. It's a little over 1.1 million. And we're pretty public service heavy here in Wichita, which we're at our cap pretty much every year, every funding year. Funds can be used based on a MOU with other city departments. And then for outside of the city, we go for RFPs for contractual services with private vendors. And then funds cannot be allocated to a specific provider or for an eligible purpose. Kind of highlight some of the activities that are being funded through PPP in the city right now. Infrastructure, park improvements in the low to moderate income neighborhoods, economic developments. We have our home repair program, which I'm sure y'all have heard of, helps low income homeowners with repairs on their homes. We have MABCD, demolition and clearance of unsafe structures, was where we have a MOU with MABCD, clear blighted structures. And I talked about the public services that we offer right now. You can see them all on the screen right now. So through the city manager's office, we up on the Office of Community Services, that's Atwater, Evergreen, and Colvin centers. Our Housing First project coordinator in our department is funded through here. And we have our domestic violence shelter services, that's through Stepstone, Wichita Family Crisis Center, and Catholic Charities Harbor House. And then our youth crime and prevention and enrichment, that's our YMCA, our YMCA's middle school after school program, Kansas Big Brothers Big Sisters. And then training and employments. Every summer we have our Ways to Work program, our TWTW, where we youth ages 14 through 17 that we connect them with jobs within the city, and they work. If you've been around the city, you've probably seen these many kids working every summer. That's what that training and employment is. So through our home funding, we have home ownership activities. We have our Home 80 program. That's our down payment assistance program that we offer. We have the housing development / redevelopment activities. That's our housing development loan program, which is basically city construction or rehabilitation of projects for rental properties or owner occupancy properties. And we have our community housing development organization, or CHODO as we call it. We're required to set aside at least 15% of our home funding for that activity. There. And lastly, we're gonna have our ESG funding right now, our homeless assistance, there's a 60% cap on that. But right now, that's our shelters that we have across the city. Homeless prevention, that's just what it says, that's to try to prevent people from entering into homelessness. That's through Center of Hope, Salvation Army, those services, rent assistance, utility assistance, that's again designed to keep people out of homelessness. Rapid rehousing, that's for individuals that are homeless, but just kind of need a little extra help with their rent, utilities, get them on their feet, get them stabilized, and they'll be successful in their housing. That's how the rapid rehousing program works there. And before I kick it over to WFN, just kind of want to give you a little rundown of that process. Thank you. As Logan kind of laid out, this funding, or this consolidated planning period, we're going with a consultant. And so this was funded through funding for 2022-2023 program year was set aside to hire a consultant for the preparation of the command plan. In May 2023, the search for a consultant began with the list of an RFP. And this past summer in July, WFN was chosen to lead with the development of the 24 to 29 comp plan. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Erica. She can come give you guys a little more information.
Hello, everybody. I'm I'm with WFN Consulting. I have with me today, LaShondra Will, who's part of our team as well. You can go to the next slide, just so they have a point of reference. All right, so first of all, I just want to say thanks for having us here today. We had a great tour, Logan and Andrew.
That guy.
Today, so we've been all over to many of the districts, got to see quite a few neighborhoods and some CDBG projects and things like that, just kind of get a feel for the community. So that was really good and really good for us to see, and kind of get an understanding of what the community is like and that sort of thing. Like I said, I'm with WFN Consulting. Our company's been around for a little more than 40 years. I have not been there that long. I've been with the company about 13 years, and LaShondra's been with us for about 8. Our company is a program management firm, so we assist cities and counties with preparing the consolidated plan, action plans, fair housing documents, and in some instances, program management. So in some of our jurisdictions, we actually do similar work to Logan and Andrew. So we have a plethora of experience here. We work with cities and counties throughout the nation. We're based out of Georgia. And let's go to the next slide. I'll give you a little bit more about myself. Like I said, I've been doing this for about 13 years. Consolidated plans, I've probably completed, 50 or 60 of those. So it's something that I enjoy doing. Didn't know I liked it until I got into it. And it's really something I just kind of developed a real passion for. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy communities, getting out, just learning about communities, how they work, how we can get better resources and how to use those resources to better the community. So I'm really excited about working with you all on that. And like I said, LaShondra's been with us for about 8 years, and she has similar experience and a wealth of experience working on that program management side. So we're here, we're ready to serve, and I think this. So the other part about it, I know Logan mentioned it earlier, we have a public survey that's available for you all to be able to complete that, ask your neighbors and all of that stuff, ask them to complete it. It's for anybody in the city to complete, and it really just goes over the needs assessment. So we're wanting to know what the needs are in the community. And specifically, as Logan said at the beginning of her presentation, we wanted to hear from you today on what are some of the needs in District 1, and then any needs that you may know of that are kind of community-wide, city-wide. Turn it over to you guys.
I have a quick question. You took a tour around all the districts. Which one would you say was the best?
Now, I can't answer that. Okay, you spent the most time. We did. Yeah. So, yeah.
I have a really quick clarifying question. on ESG, so maybe for Logan and Andrew.
Hey, yeah.
All right, all right. For the homelessness assistance, the 60% cap, are there any requirements of how you define homelessness assistance? My God. Because I know you mentioned Salvation Army, but I know they've made some recent changes in terms of their role in working with our houseless neighbors. They're not officially housing them anymore. They're more so on looking at the root causes. So I'm wondering, does that change eligibility for access to ESG funding? Or, and I know there's a couple of agencies that have actually gone that route. So I'm curious. what
Yeah, so when you think about homeless assistance, think about direct operational support to run a homeless shelter. And that's correct. So when we last went through the RFP process for ESG and CDBG funds, that was actually right before our 4th program year. And when we went out for RFP, we went out for a 2-year funding cycle. At that time, we did not know that Salvation Army is going to be closing their doors in the 5th program year. But since then, we're obviously not going to be allocating the homeless assistance funding that was allocated to them. Instead, it'll likely go back into the rapid rehousing pot to help literally homeless individuals for temporary utility assistance. But that 60% cap HUD tells us that no more than 60% of your total ESG pot can go towards direct operational support for shelters. And that really came out of, I don't know exactly how many years ago, you might,
About 2013.
2013, they really started to shift away from, providing assistance to shelters and really was trying to focus on more long-term solutions.
They call it a housing first model. So they'd rather get people into housing and then work on whatever issues they have versus, taking a longer route. That's HUD's priority.
And so typically we go right up to that 60% amount for shelter support traditionally. And so that's one thing that, in the past, when we come as part of the annual action plan process, we'd like to hear from DABS. Do you think we should stay going right up to that 60%? Or do you think additional funds would be moved towards rapid rehousing or potentially for prevention side?
I'm involved just peripherally with a backpack program where we fill backpacks for children. And I'm wondering what you're seeing in terms of children whose families are living out of cars.
In terms of homelessness?
Yes, they're living out of their car. Their home is their car.
Yeah, we certainly have some individuals who will receive assistance from our rapid rehousing program. They might be living in their car because maybe they had an interruption at work. They weren't able to work for a period.
And it's the children I'm concerned about. What are you seeing in terms of children, and can this work toward family placement where the kids, we give them a box of cake to bake for their birthday and there's no place to bake it.
We definitely have seen an increase in the amount of families who have been experiencing homelessness. That was something we learned in our last point in time count. And so that need is really growing in our community. And so part of our support for operations in the shelter services category actually goes to fund a family shelter. And so there are some resources that we're able to fund through our department to meet that need. But then the need is always growing, yeah. Especially as we see the impacts of COVID and the way that that's really kind of made our housing market very unstable in our rental market.
I actually want to hop in on that point. I believe it was your department that came by in April, give us an update on the CDBG, ESG. And I remember, because this was one of my first DAB meetings when I was really excited, I dug into all the grantees. And the only semi-permanent housing was the Garver and Gerard houses at Wichita Children's Home. And those are for families, and those are quite limited. And as you say, the need is growing. Now, I do try to keep up with what's going on in housing, but I do know that there's been a number of case studies like Salt Lake City, Houston, that have found that it is cheaper to provide housing for folks. And so I'm wondering in this next strategic plan, sort of the confluence of ESG funding, which, not to say that $250,000 isn't a lot, but it's small compared to the other numbers. And the home funding can be used, especially as the city is selling public lots in District One. To sort of address this problem at the root, because you have the rental assistance programs, you have utility programs that actually getting folks in the door, because my fear with the way that they've only sold the first batch or starting to sell the first batch is that, you know, we'll just have another wide swath where 90% of the houses are rentals. When we could be creating a permanent solution to a growing homelessness problem. That's, I got a more soapboxy there than I meant to, but yeah, a great deal, I was concerned in April that a great deal of the funding was going to temporary shelters, and that concern still remains.
So I'm gonna jump on his soapbox because I love that soapbox. The city is selling homes. We have a home shortage for, to start off, you know, affordable homes. We don't have them. Most of the homes need repair. The city just spent like $1 million on hotels for homeless. That $1 million probably could have went really, really far on some of those homes and removing people. And I had a family that reached out to me around December, I don't know. And so as a family, they couldn't go to the shelter. The mom and the kids could go, but dad couldn't go. And so the family essentially would live out of a car because they didn't want to break up the family, but they didn't have anywhere to go. So as we look at how we can use these funds better, how do we, you know, we keep talking about holistic care and things like that. So holistically keep the families together instead of telling dad, sorry, you got to go somewhere else. So that would be a thing I think is needed, not only in District 1, but citywide. And then as far as District 1, I work with youth all the time. And so, and I know Councilman Johnson is tired of me talking about this, but we need facilities where you can go and feel welcomed. I'm not gonna say any other facilities, but where they can go and feel welcome and feel, and the hours they're open when school is closed. You know, we have some great places to go, but they're not open late enough, you know, when school's out. And so looking at how can we better facilitate these establishments that are supposed to be for you, make sure they're actually open and there for you, that maybe we offset the cost of memberships or fees to get in, or the cost to keep these buildings open and staffed when kids really need to be somewhere, because the YMCA's, but the middle school after school program is a good example of where kids can go to school. But in District 1, we're really limited on where our kids can go. We're very limited on where they can go.
So one thing we heard as part of the con plan process, this time 5 years ago, was a very similar sentiment down in the Plainview community. And so one thing that we were able to do within our youth crime prevention program is actually contract with our Parks and Rec department to provide a latchkey program in Plainview, where one had previously been eliminated. And so we've had getting that program stood up over 5 years, especially in a really challenging time during the pandemic when, you know, schools went virtual and latchkey program was still trying to operate during that period of time. And so the program is really kind of hitting its stride, and really last program year and this program year. And so is a latchkey program something that you think?
But for latchkey, but for older kids, you know,
Okay.
your middle school, your high school kids, where can they go when school is out?
A teen program.
Yeah.
Sort of pivot, but also something that came up in April that the city is talking more and more about is food deserts, particularly here in District 1, and I believe using, there's I believe a case study, I want to say it was Modesto, California, that had a community-owned co-op using CDBG funds for that. And I would like to elevate that example again, just because we have a land bank that is growing, there are empty parcels of land owned by the city. That could really have a positive impact for having not only contributing to the Walton building, which we heard Philip talking about, but also a community investment.
If you'd be interested in sharing that case study, I'd be interested in reading it and learning more and seeing if there are ways we can replicate that here. We'd be willing to share.
Couple things. So Humankind Ministries does serve families, no barrier. So in case folks know of families who need a place to stay, please direct them there. I mean, last year, the organization served roughly 90 families. The only caveat is because children are in their facilities, they can't be a registered sex offender. But other than that, they do take pets, they take families. And I know that one of the projects, I think it was the 316 hotel, but I believe it was, I want to say ESG funding, or there was some HUD funding used
Yes.
to assist with that project, to flip the hotel into housing for houseless members, so that way they could be permanent and not have to worry about cycling out. So thanks for that.
Yeah, we were able to use CDBG cares, and really the nexus to COVID was individuals who live at the 316 have to be coming from homelessness, so they have to be on the by name list. And they don't take children in that one, but they do at like the Humankind Inn, it's a temporary shelter. They have some family space there. The city of Wichita also allocated some CARES Act funding that they received from, I believe, Sedgwick County. And so we, between our department and then city general funds with CARES, that paid for about 4 million of the 4,250,000 that was required to get that project.
So I would share, we have talked about it a lot as a city. I would love to see more projects like that. I think there are, to just be quite frank, I would love to see if there's an opportunity to buy up some of the dilapidated hotels or just not safe hotels along Broadway, to see if we can flip those properties into safe housing, affordable housing situations, because I think the model, which was a project with the city of Wichita and Humankind, is a great model, one that I think is seen nationally, actually, to really create space where it enhances the quality of life. It provides a roof over the heads for those who need them. And so I would love to see more projects like that. And I think it impacts our entire city when we have transitional housing like that, so.
Quick question of clarification, is CARES program kind of HUD or is it the COVID package that you thought about?
So a lot of different CARES funding was just disseminated in a lot of different ways. We received CDBG cares and ESG cares, and we've expended all of our ESG cares at this point. And I believe we have a small pot of CDBG cares left.
If I'm hearing you right, that money has not been sustained from different sources. Is that
Right, but it's not being replaced, yeah.
Got it.
We wish we could have additional, we wish we had more capital to be able to replicate projects like that. There is some potential with the land bank. There's a pot of CDBG funds that could be used for property acquisition and then disposition, with caveats, RFP process, developer, use restrictions, things like that. We're not quite there yet with the land bank though.
So I'm a little naive on where this specific assistance would fall under. I'm guessing does the actual assistance program that we tenant based or project based within home investment partnerships, or is that shared also in the CDBG?
Which specific project?
Well, I was wondering, because I'm more mindful, I'm more thinking about how the funds are distributed, and this is maybe more soapbox, but thinking District 1 particularly, one of the things I've been concerned about is this huge backlog, especially of folks at the lowest income decile, right? So that less than 5% at the lowest actually receive housing assistance, while you often see folks at a higher but still qualifying income level receiving assistance and at such a higher standard. And so that would be one of my concerns, is looking that those in the greatest need get that greatest attention. And I don't know within the current federal guidelines, because of how they're set up, if there is any way to prioritize within Wichita incentives or structures that really target and focus on the lowest of the lowest, that often get ignored on the backlog or don't even have the resources or understand what's available to them. I would also say, because I'm very considerate and mindful of, because of federal policies around tariffs and the current housing market and things, construction and all these costs are so high, and inventory is limited. I would like to see a prioritization more on tenant-based assistance that would allow families to move from different homes and different living situations, instead of just being confined to one particular place. I think that would be very beneficial in the Wichita market, especially in District 1 as well. So I don't know what we're allowed within that, but that would just be my gut of not missing or passing over opportunities within a limited supply market, as well as within a market that often ignores those grids.
Okay, can I ask a couple clarifying
Yeah,
questions?
I don't know much, I just know more about, I've heard about the tenant base. So.
Sure, so individuals who are receiving ESG assistance are presumed to be income eligible. I don't really think we're necessarily talking about ESG with this, but with CDBG and home, you can go up to 80% of the area median income. So what I'm hearing from you is maybe lowering those thresholds to ensure that the programming that we do have is accessible to those at the lower.
If that's allowed, yeah, prioritizing the like the lowest. I'd also be looking at statistics that would say, I would start worrying if you're seeing majority of that going to the highest while we're seeing so many displaced or homeless at the lowest as funds are getting dispersed within the Wichita community.
Sure.
I think what you're talking about requires a greater investment than what we have here is that you have folks who are say 75% of the median income, say, I think it's about 64,000 here. It's with everything getting so expensive, those folks might just need a quick utility bill needs to get paid this month, or rental bill needs to get paid this month. And so I fear that lowering those thresholds to hit the folks you're talking about in like the lowest 10-5% decile of income is a greater investment in not only permanent housing, mental health services, translation services, since we grow up with folks who English is not their first language, if they speak it at all. And that's outside of the scope, not outside of the scope, but is spending a greater pool of this than the folks who say it's 2 households making 50K a year with a couple kids, and they got there's repair assistance, or I think probably, but carry the example. What we're talking about is greater investment than federal government money allows, and that would have to be a priority by the city.
I guess I'd say, I was actually more, I was more thinking beyond even just the utility bill, but just actually getting housing, getting a home for someone. Yeah, I get that point, but that was more where my thought process was, just having heard on the policies. I've heard some policy nightmare stories about folks just getting missed or being on backlogs and waiting lists for forever. And so I don't know, I'm not the expert on this to tell you how, but I just want to, looking out for District 1, want to be prioritizing getting a home for those graves.
Thank you.
Last week, I attended a utility assistance workshop, and overwhelmingly, I believe Center of Hope is like the place to go to in Wichita.
There's really, only 2 agencies right now that are doing any type of prevention work, and we hear that they're both out of.
Right, so more funding needs to go in that
To
direction.
prevention.
Yes, and because even just calling Center of Hope, and I don't know, it's hard to get through.
We've heard that.
Yeah, and so maybe we need another organization, or maybe we need to staff them better, but we know money is the driver, and they run out of funds. I don't know how they get their funds. Then they change monthly, something, they get their.
I believe they receive about $2 million of outside funding, so not government funding, per year. I don't know how that gets
How it's
reallocated.
allocated, yeah.
I can tell you that we allocate to them, we've kept their funding level flat for the last number of years. About $25,000. So our funding is really just a drop in the bucket of their total pool annually.
So maybe you need to up that drop.
Yeah, the other agency that we fund is Salvation Army.
It was, Salvation Army, yeah.
Because they do still run their prevention program.
So both programs, you may need to just maybe just follow up and see, how can we answer phones better? Do we emails, like how can a citizen that needs help get help, or at least be told, sorry, something, as opposed to nobody answering this.
I think this is my last thought, I promise. I don't promise, but I'll try. This is outside of the scope of the HUD consolidated plan, so apologies to y'all. But I also wonder, in sort of trying to treat our unhoused and homeless neighbors with greater dignity, collaboration with Wichita Police Department. I've read an awful lot about the sweeps encampments in New York and how those have upended people's lives and entirely lost documentation and just made it that much harder to get services. And so thinking about barriers that some of our community members face, again, this is not something that the HUD consolidated plan can address, but at least we.
It actually, it is. Pre-outreach,
Then
ESG.
let's not tear up people's homes and throw away all their documentation and belongings and make it so shelters, so we'll only take up, they get rid of all their stuff.
And you say that it is something that can support that, in what form? Could you, yeah, I'm curious.
So we can't supplant existing funds. So let's say the police department, hot team has $500,000. We can't come in and replace a portion of those funds with ESG or really any federal source. But we could come in and increase their services as long as what they're doing meets the HUD definition of street outreach.
This is a really out there question, but we've heard that, again, the police department is down in staffing, and as a result of that, they've had to remove police officers from community-based police officers, which I think is a huge detriment to building relationships between communities of color or at-risk communities, marginalized communities, and the police. Could this be an option for that? Could funding be used to enhance that so our police department could maybe supply 1 or 2 community-based police officers, or is that like very far-fetched, not gonna happen?
I'm not gonna say it couldn't happen, but keep in mind our total pot for ESG is only $255,000. So coming in to allocate, 2 FTEs in the police department would eat up a pretty large portion of that. Not to say that it couldn't happen. It
No.
could.
You're bringing me back down to planet Earth, and I appreciate that. You don't have to, I appreciate that. So my next question is, I didn't realize the city manager's office had an Office of Community Services. That's my ignorance. Can you help me understand what programming or what initiatives fall under the Office of Community Services? Oh, we honored you.
Yeah, so we allocate for a number of years. I mean, back to even any comp plans I've ever worked in. I've been with the city for 7. We've allocated $385,000 to support operations at Evergreen, Atwater, and Colvin, and that includes staff salary and benefit costs for the community service representative as well as the administrative aide at each center.
Okay, I'm asking these questions for constituents. I'm joking. Great. Last question, someone mentioned translation services. Is that something that would potentially qualify to be used under one? And when you say translation services, so for example, I visit Dodge City a lot, and you go into their city buildings and you go into their grocery stores and they have things in multiple languages. And I think about how we often talk about from an eco-devo lens or whatever, an economic outlook lens of like our populations changing in the very near future. And I would argue that Wichita is so far behind in terms of being prepared for that shift. And so how do we ensure that from the moment someone walks into a city building or engages with a city-funded organization, that the 3 most used languages in our city are available?
So we are required, if a request is made for any HUD-funded program, to provide that translation service. If it's requested any language, it doesn't even matter if it's one of the most prevalent ones. We're required to communicate in that way, in writing as well as verbally if we're requested to do so. It's about providing a reasonable accommodation. Erica, are you aware of if translation, like providing translations could be, I'm thinking like area-wise, CDBG maybe, depending on the neighborhood.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be something that you could use CDBG for just like general city services.
God, it has to be.
It has to affect the local community.
Okay.
So if
Okay.
there were maybe in this building,
Uh-huh.
you needed to do something, that could be a possibility, but not just like on a citywide basis. We're using these dollars for general city service.
Let me make one last comment on that. And maybe, I know LaWanda has served on the committee before too for funding. And so I really just want to commend you all for going out and doing this and engaging. And then it looks like looping back in even after you've gotten the feedback. When I had the opportunity to serve on the CDBG funding committee, one of the most frustrating things was that it was great opportunity for organizations who do great work, but need that extra support in order to continue to do that great work. They didn't know about it. They didn't know that this even existed or that the city provided this opportunity. And so I hope that we'll all do our part by sharing the QR code, but also thank you for, amplifying this message, because I think a lot of organizations don't apply because they don't know it exists. So it's a matter of just simply communicating that, and thank you all for doing your due diligence of communicating.
So to clarify, then, I just understand this more, so these CDBG funds, 100% of those funds then are allocated within that.
No.
No.
So we, in the past, have gone out for requests for proposals for two facets of CDBG. That would be our domestic violence shelter services and our youth crime prevention and enrichment programs that we sub out to external entities. So like Park and Recreation didn't have to come apply for that to receive funding for the latchkey program in View. Historically, we've also gone out for RFP for ESG for shelter services and homeless prevention. We feel like we'll probably go out for RFP process again, but we're really kind of looking at this as our zero base. We're trying to get a really good idea of what community needs exist. We funded some really amazing programs year after year after year after year, but we always hear there are other needs in our community that might not necessarily be addressed with those two RFP processes. Funding new things means cutting other things. And so that's going to be a decision for our policymakers as to how we're going to see these funds go out. What parts would you like to see go out for RFP? Things like that, which is part of the reason we're trying to get in front of them in October for that council workshop. Thank you.
Sorry, I'll clarify your questions here. As far as the home funds being allocated, process on that is typically.
Sure. So for our home funds that Andrew talked about for housing development, we have what is called a housing development loan program. And so we go out with applications for HDLP. We have a new affordable housing review board. And so as applications come in, they're going to stay in staff review first to get that preliminary to make sure we have enough information to provide the board. Then those applications will go before the Affordable Housing Review Board. And I say will because we haven't received HDLP applications and haven't taken them in front of the board. So this is a new process for us. Then the Affordable Housing Review Board will review the applications. Applicants will have an opportunity to make a pitch, explain their project, answer questions, clarifying questions. Affordable Housing Review Board will make a recommendation, which will go to City Council. If they recommend to City Council to deny and not approve the application, that'll still go to City Council for review and consideration, same way an approval recommendation would. Now, for our HOMAIDI funds, which are funds that we have that are providing down payment assistance, in the past, those funds have been provided in conjunction with HDLP projects. And so we are looking at potentially opening up HOMAIDI for just general individuals to come in and apply. In order to, I don't want to get into the complexities of home because you guys will probably fall asleep. But in order for us to have our recapture provision for those home funds, they have to be coupled with that down payment assistance so that the homeowner isn't stuck paying that development subsidy. And sometimes that development subsidy is over $100,000. And so that would flip the homeowner upside down in their mortgage. Rental is a different beast. It has to stay affordable for a period of time, or those development funds have to come back for us. So we have to be really strategic about if we do decide to open up HOMAIDI to just any general low to mod income first time home buyer. We have to make sure that we have enough funds to couple with the down payment assistance to couple with the development funds for homeownership projects. Otherwise, those homeowners would be on the hook for the gap financing. Does that make sense?
And these assistance programs are working in conjunction. There's also like the I'd say 502 or the HUD's 23. Are these all working together, or y'all specifically?
Most of our home buyers, they will receive FHA loans. They're like Cap Fed or Bank of Oklahoma. Habitat for Humanity finances their own mortgages, which is really great for our home match. We're required to bring 25% match for each project. All the foregone taxes and interest that Habitat could be charging, we compare it to current rates. We get to count that as match towards our project This really helps us out on our home match liability.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I know that was a lot of information, but
I
I appreciate the questions.
Yeah, I think my question's gonna backtrack to something you were saying earlier, which is that you haven't gotten applications for that particular pool of money. How is it being advertised? to folks?
So it's currently advertised on our website. And then communications will do pushes every now and then, but
Like social media pushes, or like it'll go in the Eagle? 'Cause
we don't really do Eagle ads or anything like that. We could also promote it through like community newspapers.
That's what I was
That's something we
gonna
could ramp
suggest.
up.
Yeah.
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 Your current
Because
one.
really for those development funds, for or nonprofit developers could, so we really need to get strategic about, we don't want to just send it to a certain, certain developers and have other ones say, well, you sent it directly to them. Why, I didn't know about it, so we have to make sure we're being pretty diplomatic, but I know that, typically we're funding with those funds, for-profit developers, they're not making enough profit margin on it to do the work. They could, but there's just not as much interest because we cap developer fee at 10%. And so it's really those nonprofit, I know, yeah. It's really those nonprofit groups that are receiving those funds or applying for those funds year to year.
Erica, from your expertise, what are some non-traditional youth enrichment programs?
Non-traditional. It can really just be anything you think of. Like, I know you're specifically interested in team programming. Does the Y offer something like that?
Yes, the Y, I mean, yeah. But you have to have, we have to have.
I've seen like,
I love the
you know,
Y,
like
but you have to have membership.
basketball leagues,
Yeah.
things of that nature in some communities, and those have been pretty popular.
So,
as of late.
okay, so I'm thinking of like non-established programs.
Well, then you'd also have to think about who's gonna take that administrative burden to offer those
Right.
services. And is it something that you're expecting city to take on? Typically, it's a nonprofit that will take that on. It's probably a grassroots organization that's really passionate about it. Sometimes you can get your business community involved, because it does take money, and then even though they're teenagers, they're still children.
Right.
So the administrative burden for that sometimes it outweighs, the good that you're trying to do. Now, that was my other life. See, it worked for Boys and Girls Club for a long time. So,
Okay.
they do have some, right, some different things.
They do, yeah. So when I was on the committee to look at grants, so a few years ago, you were going back to like data-driven programs. And so is that still the model, or is that a barrier for new programs to get funding?
It can be, I think I see three of you that have served on the grants review committee in the past. It is hard as a new organization to break through and be funded. And part of that is when you have an organization who's been administering this program for 30 years, they know how it works. They spend down their funds, they have outcomes, they've really, worked towards that. And they have a demonstrated history. And so it can be tough for new organizations. One thing that was implemented as part of our last con plan process was a preference after the third year for new organizations, which actually resulted in a few new organizations being funded. And we saw, even though we provided, pretty in-depth technical assistance, those grants had a hard time getting acclimated to all of the federal regulations because there's a lot of red tape that comes with.
Because I know you did start with the technical assistance for some of the potential grantees or awardees that did not get funding, then you went backwards and tried to help them, right?
Right, we would do debrief calls to let them know these are things that could strengthen your application. These are things that the grants review committee saw that they liked about other organizations. Implementing those as part of your process could help you out in the next funding cycle. And so we do extend that courtesy to new applicants. I will tell you, there were a lot of organizations who were ticked off about the preference that was given in consideration of those applications, because it really, sometimes it can turn into a turf war over the lines. Especially for organizations that have received them for years and years and years, they really rely on those funds, and so it can be a really dicey decision to make the decision not to go out for RFP on a certain given, pot of funding. It really can. It's not an easy decision to consider or make.
Needs to have some transparency though.
I was gonna say, yeah, it seems that I have served on it. Then there's that culture of I've gotten this funding for, so many years, I rely on this. It's not really like a process application. Like I know that I'm gonna get this because I've gotten it for 20 years. So, yeah, I don't know how to combat that, but I think that looking into that ways to make it more welcoming to our community versus like, oh, I can't ask for these funds. I know this organization, they're gonna not want to work with me or look, whatever the case may be. But I would also echo the communication, because when I was serving on the board, I shared it, a post, and then a few organizational leaders were like, what is this? I have no idea about this. I would love to apply. It was too late at that point. But the communication getting out. And then I believe when you came and shared, we mentioned grocery stores, but I can't remember exactly what that conversation was about with the CDBG funding. I think it was like finding a developer, and the ROI, that was the main issue. Is that, am I on point with that, or can you elaborate a little bit more if that would be eligible?
So we've funded some capital needs for various save lots around Wichita in the past, and so it's a risk. And we've done assistance to grocery stores with CDBG economic development funds in the past, and right now we haven't been approached by anyone who'd be interested in that. What we were talking about the last time was in some of the areas where there are food deserts, the land bank could come in and potentially acquire a parcel of land that would yield a CDBG eligible outcome if there was a grocery store within that LMI area, which would also theoretically be within a food desert. That's a mechanism to be able to provide land for it to happen, but we would need a viable business plan in order for us to dispose of that property, or like a ground lease or something for the city owned the business would obviously own them. But then the risk there is that if that ever closes up, that land still has to meet a CDBG eligible outcome. And so economic development and acquisition projects for things that we're talking about can be risky for the city.
You both are like, is there gonna be an opportunity for community to come out and learn? I think I've just absorbed a bunch of clarity and knowledge tonight. And I think there are so many folks in our community who see the numbers and go, that's mine. Like I can do this. And I think you added a lot of clarity. Is there an opportunity, or will there be an opportunity for a community forum at some point for folks who may be interested in applying, or hey, we're thinking about this, but we really don't know if we're a good fit? I think of even your comments of who has the administrative capacity to really handle a lot of the red tape that comes with federal compliance. I work for a national organization. We get federal funds. It's a lot. But I don't think a lot of people understand that. And so I think it would be helpful to communicate that to folks who are thinking about this.
So one thing that we've done in the past, really at the request of Councilman Johnson, this was something that he wanted to see in the current. Sorry, Brandon, I don't know. Stop and say yes.
Brandon's.
Anyway, at the request of Brandon, he requested that we hold a nonprofit resource forum to educate. And that was a few months prior to RFPs actually coming out for CDBG and ESG funding. And so that is something that we've done in the past. It might be something that would be better suited prior to our 5-year or right after our 5-year period starts, to kind of help us understand what needs are actually out there. And so that's something we can look at putting together as part of this process.
Yeah, it would be great. I've seen it work well.
Have you seen it not work well?
No, usually.
Y'all wanna do it.
To be fair, the grant funds that we work with, they're generally good. So usually there's not a lot of opposition. Most complaints we get is, oh, I didn't know about that. And in the community where it worked well, they just do it on a consistent basis. So just throughout the year, periodically, there might be a workshop or a meeting that just talks about CDBG, how you use the funds, because agencies may not be ready today. They may not be ready when an RFP comes out. They may not be ready for 3 to 5 years. Because when we're talking about these grant dollars, they do have a lot of red tape. And that's what I was getting at with you, is partnering with other larger organizations is a really good way to get that programming into the community. And using, the larger organizations, administrative support, but you're really focusing on the programming. And that's kind of one of the things that I did in my past career. We had programming, but we didn't have to think about, payroll and insurance and all of that stuff, because we took our programs to nationally recognized organizations that already had the captive audience that we're looking for, children. So we want to teach them about street safety or gang safety or what have you. We just want to operate this program. So then that makes our overhead really low. So we can take, a $50,000 grant and get it done versus, trying to start everything from scratch would probably be, $300,000 to $500,000. So just that.
I really like that concept, and I think we do have organizations that do that, or like our fiscal sponsors.
Yeah.
But I think that is a cultural, collaborative minded space, and with that. No. That's that's good. I just like where you're going with that.
Is there no collaboration?
Well, I was just gonna say, and I feel like Wichita has a plethora of nonprofits. Like, we don't need another nonprofit. So if we have this mindset of thinking like, okay, we want to do this program, who, we know these big players, who can we? But then again, it has to be the willingness and seeing that benefit.
You have to keep trying.
Yeah, but I think
it's the unwilling one, or the one you didn't think
about
would
would
help,
potentially,
is the
right?
one that's, the biggest champion. So I would just say, if it's something you want to see, don't stop.
Yeah.
Don't stop, and have those people really, people see your passion, they see your heart. They know when it's right, those sorts of things. So just don't stop. Just keep going.
So I gotta dive into this a lot more before y'all come back in April, because I'm like, this has been a learning.
I wanna learn more.
But I guess a part of this is clarifying, these kind of overall allocation percentages. Are they basically in line of what we've been doing for the last few years? Is this a shift in a different direction? Has home been like about a third of it? How is that kind of allocated? Because I think this also goes to the discussion of the same organizations expecting the same under the CDBG, but also there sounds to be some phenomenal new opportunities under home. And I was just curious then why, I know that might ruffle some feathers. Why is home not receiving more funding than the CDBG?
So we have,
That's,
Ferdinand, you want to take this one? I feel
Well,
like
it's a formula allocation from HUD. So HUD determines that. So Congress sets a spending budget. So CDBG is really, I call it like the granddaddy. It really can support all your community development. It can support some housing things and some homeless stuff. So Congress sets those funding levels, and then it's divided up amongst grantees throughout the country. So.
So let me make a clarifying statement. The agencies that have been funded are phenomenal. We've done some really good work in Wichita, and those programs, they are legacy programs, but they get the job done. So I'm not knocking any program at all.
Because they get the job done, they should be able to get the
They
funds still.
Right, so it's this, right?
that's really part of the reason that we want to get in front of city council and at the end of October, is to kind of communicate what needs we're hearing, what we're learning from district advisory boards, what we're learning from stakeholder groups that we're required by HUD to consult with as part of the con plan process. And then also what we're hearing from the public, because typically we're ramping up those RFP processes for the parts that we take out for CDBG and ESG. We're ramping that up, working on the RFP in November, getting it out in December, and then convening the review committee in February. And so when we go to we're hearing a lot of what we've heard here, and that there are other needs that could theoretically go out for a request for proposal process. And so that'll be a question that we're posing to council at that time to try and get feedback and direction on what aspects should we go out for with RFP, what have we funded in the past that we might not necessarily look at funding for the next 5-year period. It's going to be a hard conversation, but I think it's one that this community is needed for some time.
Just to say, I work for a national legacy organization, and let's say and I work in fundraising for them. But if we're not getting the job done, which you were seeing a growing housing affordability, homelessness crisis in the city, well, then you gotta find people who are. And so I think in potentially next RFP processes, community-centered fundraising might be an avenue to talking to some of these larger organizations that kind of just expect the money to come through. Because we're not gonna solve anything if we just keep handing the same folks money to keep putting the same band-aids on the same problem. I don't.
You said it.
It's gonna get fun.
Not good, I have a whole page of nothing. That's what you came there for, right? I did.
This has been really amazing.
Yeah, it's really good.
Really, thank you for your level of engagement.
I don't want to miss an opportunity though for anyone online or here would like to give feedback or ask questions.
3 things if I could, I'm trying to remember. Right. Rapid rehousing, the Inn, Humankind, the Inn, and Center of Hope. Where some of the people I work with every day, in and out every day, they can't get into the inn, they're full. You can never get into the inn. You call, I tell them to call multiple times a day, call morning, call afternoon, call evening, can't get in. I've called, can't get in, there's no openings. The Center of Hope, I have not called them recently, but when I have, or when I encourage the people I work with to call the Center of Hope, they can't get through. Used to stand in line. 4 o'clock in the morning, have to stand in line. A lot of people don't have transportation. I don't know if this is beneficial for any of this for me to share any of this. This is just what I've experienced over the years. And, the Salvation Army, man, that hit us where I work hard, closing their shelter. With all their previous limitations as well with their shelter. But then rapid rehousing, who funds, or who do I tell people to contact for rapid housing?
Our department,
What department is?
the Housing and Community Services Department,
Okay,
we self-administer that program.
oh, okay,
But now there are other agencies in Wichita that run
Right.
rapid rehousing. They've received funding from the Continuum of Care. And so there are other agencies that run rapid rehousing.
and then Housing First, I've heard those names, I'm in a different position right now. But so if the population I work with, then who do I tell them to contact for Housing First? How do they qualify? What do they need to qualify for Housing First or rapid rehousing?
So for both of those programs, they need to be on what is called the by name list, which is managed in the Homeless Management Information System. And so we can do by name list assessments within our department, but typically we're relying on that to be from a referring agency, such as the number of partners that we've talked about here tonight, as well as other agencies within the continuum of care. Housing First is for chronically homeless individuals. And so these are individuals who meet HUD's definition of chronically homeless, which is over an extended period of time, multiple instances. There's a real technical definition. That's one thing. We use definitions of homelessness, I believe, interchangeably in our community. I think one thing we need is to kind of all agree on set things. Rapid rehousing is for individuals who are literally homeless, who might just need a little bit of assistance. So that program is 2 months of rent and utility assistance and security deposits to get someone on their feet. So typically these individuals have is it high or low VI SPDAT? They're either, they're ranking on the homeless management information system, I believe a high score on the HMIS. And so it means that they just need a little bit of intervention to get them back on their feet and stable. And so those are typically individuals who have employment or income that can then support their housing once they get into the unit.
I lost my train of thought. So I know one of them or both of them, I can't remember, couch surfing is not considered homelessness, but they're homeless. They have no home, but they're just sleeping on someone's couch like tonight. Tomorrow night, they might be someone else's couch or something. But if they have a couch, that doesn't count. That excludes them from being homeless, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Are you saying by name?
By name list.
By name list, okay, thank you.
So, and what does that mean?
The by name list is a list of individuals ranked by their VI SPDAT score. So the VI SPDAT is basically assessing whether or not the rating that someone would perish as a result of their homelessness. And so I always get it confused because I don't work in VI SPDATs, but I believe if you're at the high end of the spectrum,
More chronic.
you're more likely to die. Okay, then I just said that backwards. If you're in the middle, you just need probably a little bit of intervention. If you're at the beginning, like a 1, 2, 3. So it's a score of like 1 to 14, I believe. And so it's based on an assessment. And so if someone has to be assessed through the VI SPDAT in order to give them that score, and then the by name list actually ranks individuals on the likelihood that they
So
would.
that means you're in a shelter, you have nowhere to live, and then you've been assessed.
And so any shelter that receives continuum of care funding, which is administered by the United Way, or ESG funding, is required to VI SPDAT someone upon entry.
So if I've had trouble paying my rent for the last 3 months and I'm getting ready to get evicted, do I qualify for assistance?
For potentially homeless prevention.
But then you go to Center of Hope and they don't answer the phone.
They're probably out of funding.
It's busy or they're already out of funding.
It's also the volume of the need has,
Yes.
like, it has increased so tremendously, so.
And it was bad before.
It's part of the missing housing.
Right, I'm happy to give you my email. I serve on the board of humankind, and if there's ever
Yeah.
anyone, even if the answers were
Today,
full,
yesterday.
I would love to give you that answer directly, but I know that the organization, the volume of those who are houseless has just increased so much in such a short period of time in our community, that it's not that no one can answer the phone, it's that they're probably on the other line
Right.
telling so many other people, and I imagine it's the same for the Center of Hope. That it's just, people can't keep up.
Yeah, no, I get it, right. Yeah, I understand, thank you. Sure. Also, I know this probably isn't relevant here, but this. And how do I word this? How do I say? The staff, or the way the staff is representing, let's say the Inn, Humankind, the Inn, for instance, their conversation over the phone or at the door is not a pleasant experience. I ring the doorbell or knock and we stand there an hour. Nobody will come and answer the door. And, you know, we're with the other people, but we're another agency trying to talk to them. Nothing.
Can I talk to you after this?
Sure.
Thank you.
Is there anyone online, any comments? Thank you so much. Thank you to all the staff members for a great meeting, robust discussion even after 6 zoning cases. So without objection, adjourn.